this is as close as you were going to get to it. Sure. Right.
Folks, if we could take our seats. Having been informed by the town clerk that we have quorum, we'll proceed to Article 10. So for Article 10, you should be referencing one of the green sheets that you either got last night or got up here at the green table. If you don't recall what a green sheet is, a green sheet is a document that has been approved by a change from the warrant that has been approved by the submitting authority and approved by the warrant committee. So the green sheet entirely replaces the content you see in the warrant. So you can ignore what's printed in the warrant and just go to your Article 10 green sheet. As you will see in the warrant, there was no recommendation from the warrant committee at the time of printing the warrant. And so the first order of business is to hear from Tom Caldwell, before Tom Caldwell goes anywhere, to hear the opinion of, pardon me, I've got something from the town clerk, excuse me. Tell you what, since we did have a number of devices that didn't work last night, why don't we do a quick test again? Mr. Mal, can you put up a device test and we'll make sure everybody's connected here tonight? And then hope for no power failure. Do you like to read books? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain.
I'm good, thank you. Oh, look at that. No, you know what I do like those. You're better, thank you.
And if we could put up the results, please. So everybody, here's a chance to look and see if your vote got recorded. So everyone's good with their voting device, apparently. Okay, excellent. Let's proceed to Article 10. As you saw, there were a number of articles that where the warrant committee had not had an opportunity to provide a recommendation. So that's the purpose of the green sheets tonight. So I thought we'd start with presentation by or just discussion by the chair of the warrant committee, their explanation of, I'm sorry, not Article 10, pardon me, wrong one. Just in Article 10, let me go to, let's see. I think presentation by Ms. Hall. Did you want to say a few words first on Article 10?
Hello and good evening. Is the mic on? Can you all hear me? Is it on? Okay. No, I don't think it's on. I'm too tall. Okay, I'll look that up. All right. Good evening. My name is Meredith Hall. I am the chair of the planning board and town meeting member from Precinct 3. The next two articles that we're going to discuss, Article 10 and 11, I just want to explain to you that there's been a lot of history with both of these articles. The planning board has been working for months to develop these articles. The site plan has been something that has been on the planning board's list for years. It's replacing something that currently exists in our zoning bylaws, which is incredibly vague. And this just is a way, this will just give consistency for the site plan approval process, and it will just lay the table for developers, the planning board, and the residents of Milton, the neighbors of these projects. So with that, I just want to read the purpose, just because this really just clarifies what is site plan approval. The purpose of this section is to protect the health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the inhabitants of the town by providing a means to determine whether a proposed use of land or structures is in compliance with sound site utilization principles relative to traffic circulation and safety, pedestrian safety, access, off-street parking and loading, emergency vehicle access, stormwater drainage, screening, signage, exterior lighting, visual impact of parking, storage, or other service areas, and consistency with the character and scale of surrounding landscape and buildings. So with that, we have put together a site plan article, which is I can't tell you how much better it is than what we currently have in our zoning. So this is, again, to repeat, replacing section 275-12.4. The article that you have is a green line version. We were still waiting for the municipal law unit to review this. So both this article and Article 11 have both had the department which reviews for the AG all zoning articles that come from the municipalities. So this has had review of that, and we have addressed those. Specifically in the site plan, we were able to address recommendations made by MLU, and recently we have some amendments tonight to the ADU article, which are in response also to some comments that were made before going to the AG's office. So these have been thoroughly vetted. Both these articles, I also want to say, were unanimous by the planning board and voted unanimously by the warrant committee at the time of their meeting. So it's nice to have everyone on the same board. So I'm hoping there are a few amendments that are being proposed, but I'm hoping that we can pass both Article 10 and Article 11 for the benefit of the town. So with that, I think I'll turn it over and we can pull up. Would you like to bring up the person who is first making amendments?
No, someone else has.
First, okay. So there are a couple people. We'll start with the site plan, Article 10. There are a few, and we did get them yesterday at 3 o'clock and today.
Well, let's not get into the amendments yet, though. They
I'm
haven't
sorry?
been made. Let's not discuss any amendments from the floor yet.
Not
right?
yet.
No.
So that's it, and we do have responses to those items, so.
Right, we'll get to those when they're made. Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. O'Donnell, I think you're first up. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Kathleen O'Donnell. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 7 and the newly selected chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, replacing Mr. Leonard, who we honored last night. I stand up to move to have this article sent back to the Planning Board for further study. There's really, in my mind, no point in talking about amendments to it because I think it has several fatal flaws to it. First of all, there are provisions in here that I think not only are illegal, but they also intrude onto the jurisdiction of the Zoning Board of Appeals, taking care of my turf. I would point out that the Planning Board has limited discretion to deny site plan approval, and they have put language in here that gives them a lot more rights to deny things that are being built as of right. And as the chair pointed out, Ms. Hall, that this is an idea to sort of take a look at projects to make sure that they fit in with the neighborhood that they're in, that the site is appropriate for the use, that it complies with zoning. They can turn down, they can deny approval if they find that, first of all, the applicant doesn't give them all the information they need, or doesn't pay the fee, or it doesn't comply with zoning, or the project is of some port that says that I can't impose enough conditions on it to make sure that I've adequately addressed some extraordinary circumstances. But their language is much broader than that, and I think is going to be found illegal if we get challenged in a court of law. Next, the authority of the Planning Board to regulate the interiors of restaurants, bars, and entertainment uses is not in the Planning Board's jurisdiction. That's in the jurisdiction of the Board of Appeals, not the Planning Board. They don't have any right to regulate interiors at all. There is also a provision in there talking about the fact that if you have to do site plan review and a special permit, you have to do them concurrently. The language isn't very clear. Maybe they have an amendment that would fix that up, because there's a question about, well, what's the final action? When do I get to say, okay, fine, I'm done, and I could appeal the decision or not? You have no idea, because there you have a site plan, special permit. How does that duke itself out? And no one knows. It's a bad idea, I think, and I think other people on this floor over the years have said the same thing, to include the level of design details into a zoning bylaw. Because you can't change them without coming back here and amending the zoning bylaw. So if you say further on, the Planning Board says, you know, we think that the tree caliper that we want is a different dimension, they have to come all the way back through here for a 2/3 vote to make that change. That seems insane to me. Why don't you just have design standards that you vote, that you have as the Planning Board, you provide to somebody? They shouldn't be in the zoning. Then, the length of time given the Planning Board to go through the site plan approval is, in the current draft, 6 months. We don't get 6 months to look at a 40B project, which is an affordable housing project. We only get 120 days. So that's a problem, the length of time. And then they're applying these standards to any multifamily. In Milton, a multifamily is a two-family. So if you decided that you own a two-family house and you want to turn the back porches into part of the living space, you're going to have to go through all the hoops that are in this site plan review article. And that, to me, just seems unfair, too expensive. You're going to have to hire a lawyer, and that's not going to be a bargain, and go through all those hoops. Maybe they could look at, say, something about the fact that it's a minor adjustment or a major adjustment. There could be all kinds of things they could do that would make it easier for people to be able to do simple things in this town. As I said, multifamily, that's a two-family, that's a three-family, and look at those design standards, and that's what you're going to have to look at for just a simple thing like that, which is the reason I believe that it should go back for further study to the Planning Board. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Furs, you're... Pardon me? Yes. Is that a motion? Did you make a motion, right, ma'am? Yes. Is there a second? Very good. I think, Mr. Furs, did you want to speak to the motion to refer?
Hello, Brian Furs, Precinct 10. As I always do, I want to start by thanking the Planning Board for taking a shot at this because it's really, really hard to do this work. I've done it, and it's really tough to do it, and it's even worse to sit here and listen to people complain about it, which is what I'm gonna do now. I was the one that was gonna come up and make comments and suggestions, and I'm gonna reserve the right to do that if this doesn't go forward. I agree with a lot of what was just said. One of my comments, several were found out of scope, several I can live with. There was one that is very concerning to me, which I just want to add on for a reason that I would ultimately support sending this back. And that is that I think that section FQ in this document is really tricky for me. It gives a long list all the way through the letter Q of things that the board can consider, which I agree with all of. The last one is other aspects of site design that may be reasonably within the spirit and intent of this section. And I have no idea what that means. And it feels very vague and arbitrary to me. And that is concerning in a town where, candidly, we don't go out of our way to make things easy for applicants. So I find that to be a really challenging piece, and if that's out of scope to remove it, then I would have to agree to send it back. Thank you.
Very good. Now, the motion before the body is the motion to refer back. Does anyone wish to, pardon me? Sorry. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion to refer this back to the planning board? Yes, Ms. Hall. If you do, just please make your way down. I see you're making your way down. Thank you.
Thank you. To begin, I would just like to ask Peter Mello to come up here and address the legality aspect that was addressed. I think that was inappropriate, but I want Peter Mello to address this, please.
Mr. Mello, you're recognized.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of town meeting. Oh, is that better? Can you hear me now? Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of town meeting. In terms of, first of all, we did, as I think Meredith mentioned. Speak into the mic. Better?
Yes.
Okay. So I had preliminary discussions with an attorney or multiple attorneys from the municipal law unit regarding both site plan and the ADU bylaw. Nothing was flagged to suggest that either of these provisions, and I know we're talking about site plan at the moment, would be denied wholesale. There may be cautionary comments or potentially, depending on, I think, the conclusion of still evolving discussions, particularly with respect to ADU issues, there may be language in those decisions disapproving isolated text or provisions, but nothing that would suggest that there'd be a significant likelihood of a wholesale disapproval. With regard to I think Ms. O'Donnell mentioned the language regarding the board's ability to deny site plan approval for as-of-right uses. She's right that it's limited. It's significantly limited. And I think I mentioned when I was before the warrant committee that there's a famous quote from a legal decision where the judge said that site plan review is the ghost that haunts land use law, or words to that effect. And so it's kind of a difficult, challenging subject matter, but there's a often cited excerpt from a decision where it says something to the effect of site plan review denial for an as-of-right use is confined to circumstances in which the problem is so intractable. I know the word intractable appears there, that it's susceptible to no resolution. So the circumstances in which site plan review can be denied, it is true, are significantly limited. In my conversation with the MLU, again, preliminary discussion, but the language as it appears in the warrant was verbatim what was shared with the MLU. Certainly there was no suggestion that that language was per se improper, inappropriate. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a comment cautioning that it has to be applied, consistent with the legal standards that govern site plan review for as-of-right uses. But I don't think that that language would be disapproved based on my conversations with the municipal law unit. And I want to emphasize that nothing, certainly there was no binding determination by anyone at the MLU, but I think that if that language were to be disapproved, they probably would have conveyed that to me in those discussions. So, but again, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a caution or two just emphasizing the need to apply that language consistently and lawfully, but certainly there was nothing to suggest it would be disapproved wholesale.
Yes, Ms. Hall?
Sorry, and so to follow up, we've actually just met to amend some of our language to address the concerns of both Kathleen and Brian. So we are prepared to accept some language changes to make it feel more comfortable with them and ensure to the town meeting that this has been thoroughly vetted. So we are willing to accept. Brian sent over 8 amendments that he had wanted to propose yesterday, and most of those we have accepted that we would accept. All of those, except for those out of scope, we would be willing to change those. To Kathleen's concern about rejection, it is a fine line explaining how the site plan approval process works, but we would change that language to accommodate that we would put language in to not say reject, but to put in approval language. So we are willing to do those and work with you because we think this legislature was passed, went into effect February 2nd. ADUs are legal now. We think it just will benefit the town of Milton to have some guidance in as that applications come in, that that there are some standards that we provide. And most municipalities, the other thing I didn't mention is both the site plan approval and the ADUs, we have been thoroughly studying what other communities are doing. So a lot of the language that we have either is currently in our own site plan approval that we have. It's language that actually went into a lot of it, the design guidelines, went into the MBTA zoning that town meeting passed. So this language is not new language. These are not new items. And we studied extensively what other municipalities have done, and the person who reviewed our ADU article is the one responsible for reviewing all the new ADU articles throughout the Commonwealth. So this was somebody who's looked at this carefully. We are willing to work and see something get passed and not send it back to town meeting. So
thank you. Ms. O'Donnell, before you get another bite, we did have Ms. Agostino.
All I wanted to just say was that I'd be willing to withdraw the motion to see the amendments that the planning board is making.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll accept your withdrawal.
I might be back.
If there's no objection.
No promise.
If there's no objection from the body to accept Ms. O'Donnell's withdrawal. Very good. Ms. Agostino, do you wish to speak? Since you're down here. Yes, sir.
If there are a series of amendments that the proponent of the article wants to incorporate in the article, shouldn't they be accepted as put in as a friendly amendment? And shouldn't our discussion, shouldn't we, number one, know what those are? And number two, shouldn't our discussion be directed to that rather than generalized discussion to an article that the planning board no longer wants to vote?
Yes, I was just trying to see if maybe perhaps the member had a comment or question.
I'd like your response.
You'd like my response to that? Yes, what we're going to move to now is discussion of the article that you see before you in the green sheet, which did have some changes in it that came from the review that Mr. Mello referred to from the municipal law unit. And then we'll see if Mr. Furs wants to get up and make some of his amendments, and then we'll see the response of the planning board. Is that what you're referring to now, Ms. Agostino? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane DiTullio, Agostino, Precinct 8. Mr. Moderator, these are directed at you, as the moderator. I had made a promise I was not going to speak so that we would be done in 2 nights. However, I greatly appreciate that the first motion that I came down to address was withdrawn, and I'm very impressed that the municipal, for those who might be new town meeting members, it's all about the process, and I don't want people to leave tonight confused as to how the vote went, because I know I've gotten phone calls about last night, and so it's about the process, so I appreciate you clarifying anything I might misspeak about the process. To hear that the warrant committee, as well as everyone else involved, the planning board, worked really hard on these 2 articles, and they're very timely due to the new state laws, et cetera, et cetera. So I was very impressed to hear that the municipal law unit, these type of amendments or bylaws that we pass, actually have to get approved by them. So I was thrilled to hear the town council, because that was one of my questions for the moderator in the process. Town council actually reviews everything that goes into the warrant. So it's great that the planning board wants to work with. I greatly respect, these other people have put years into many of the articles that actually control how developers work in our town. And I just want to, hopefully, if you can clarify, if anyone has processing questions along the way, but you've got the municipal law unit has reviewed it, you've got town council having no concerns, graciously, those who have amendments are going to make them, and I strongly recommend that once we get through this and approve it, amendments can always come as we learn more. So thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for your help. I'm not coming up again or
Okay.
down.
Okay. Touche. Yeah. Up in the booth, is it possible? Yet they're waving yes. Thank you for raising that point. Appreciate it. Okay. Now, Mr. Furs, I believe you had some amendments you'd like to make. So, Mr. Furs, you'd rather defer to see what the planning board has decided to propose?
We actually, to try to be more, as efficient as possible, we put a red line together. So there's a red line version, so we can go through quickly.
Can we wait to make sure the warrant committee, I think she just got a copy of this before the meeting, so let's give her a second to
Yeah.
look it up.
And I'll go through Brian's first, and then Kathleen. And go through them all? Okay.
Is this the right document, Ms. Hall, or not?
Yes. Yes, this is. Oh, can we enlarge the print is the question?
Yep, let's go
People
to 150% like last night.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Okay. So we were, no, so on this, so we had not seen the notwithstanding any zoning bylaw provisions, to the contrary. There, sorry. So the notwithstanding any other zoning bylaw provisions to the contrary had not been in a version that we had seen. That was, so I would just need to consult just on that one with the board. Was it? Oh, that was agreed to. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. Okay. Here we have 12. Sorry. Where? Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. So we're at the net new. And then, do we pass the restaurant language? Sorry, we want to go back up. So the reason why we put this in as,
Can you refer to the section you'd like the warrant committee clerk to
yeah,
look
now
at?
I'm trying to look at
By-
it sideways.
By section and number, please?
Yes, load, was it? There, right there, okay. So, under B3, so the reason why we separated this out, because there are times, not that we're looking to change if it's a restaurant use within the interior, what we're looking at, and I'll just use the example of Abbey Park and Navara. So when those restaurants came in, Navara, for example, was required because of limited space, a loading zone and valet parking. Those have subsequently been changed, and we've seen the effects to East Milton Square. The loading zones, we have vehicles loading in the middle of the road. So when you have a restaurant or an entertainment use, there is an additional level of need for deliveries, for just parking in general. Traffic issues are affected. So this just allows site plan approval around a restaurant use to say, is there adequate safety for loading, unloading? Is there enough parking, et cetera? So that's really just addressing why those uses are more intensive uses, and especially in an area like East Milton Square, for example, or some of our smaller business districts. So that's why we separated that, to have that, just to be able to weigh in on traffic, parking, loading zones, et cetera, which have really been a problem. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
What's the next section you want then?
So then we were the net new. The net new, yes. So this is just adding 10 or more net new parking spaces. We accept this language for both 12 and 14. And then outside consult. This was, sorry, the outside consultant's language. So this was language which is actually, Brian, no, we accepted this language. We actually did accept the language that Brian put. The only thing that we did not include is the language saying special permit, because that was out of scope, and that was just the piece that, because this isn't necessarily related to a special permit. So we took that out, but everything else we did include. Okay. Failure, okay. So we accepted all of that? Yep. Okay. This was just a simple language change when we were substituting shrubs and hedges. I don't believe we wanted to redline the shrubs and hedges line, but we wanted all of that included. So that should read, all of from shrubs to one required tree should all be included, and we accepted that change.
So
sorry, and we just wanted to say at a minimum of 3 shrubs for every trees, actually. Yes. For every required tree, correct. Great. Yes. Sorry, the period, yeah, that's. Okay. That was all to be included. Yep, that's all good. So this is what Kathleen was referring to with the language of reject. What we have found is recently there is more case study that when a planning board rejects site plan approval, typically the courts will not uphold the rejection. There is certain cases, I believe in Marblehead, where there was a site plan approval that was rejected, a project that was rejected, and it was upheld because of setback issues. But so overall, we just wanted to appeal to the concerns that for an as of right application that we could not reject it. So this language addresses that, and it says the board may condition any plan. And that's common how those are approved with conditions. So we accept that. Timeline, site plan approval, 30 days. Actually, this, there was actually an item on here that was requested that didn't make it. And it says no more than 6 months after the submission. Under timeline, instead of saying no more than 6 months after the submission, that was 120 days. So the request that came in was that we change that to 120 days. We did have discussion because oftentimes we are waiting on peer review consultants, especially if it's stormwater management, but we're willing to put this language in because it would really be the applicant's delay, not the planning board. So, okay, so we need to change, instead of 6 months, we would put in 120 days.
So you did accept that one?
We did, yes. And there, where's the? Sorry, can I? And there is one extra sentence that did not get added. And that is following the submission period, it should then say the time period within which final action shall be taken may be extended to a date agreed to by the applicant and the board. Sorry. It's really small font. Okay. Yeah. Agreed to by the applicant and the board. Period. Yep, that's it. Okay. Thank you. I'll hold
All right. So just to make sure I'm clear where we are, the planning board has looked at this language and you voted on it as a board this evening?
That is correct.
Okay. Has this language been reviewed by the warrant committee this evening?
This one more, sorry.
Pardon that? And maybe you could go to the microphone.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so withdrawal.
So the warrant committee reviewed all this language before the meeting started, and what was the warrant committee's vote?
We
Do you
have one
comments?
more. We do have one more addition that was another amendment that came in late that we'd like to add. But
Yeah, if I may interject, Chairman, Chairwoman.
Can you speak into the mic?
Yes. The warrant committee had the opportunity to review both the amendments from the members from the floor and received some planning board feedback. We're in the process. We are prepared to take a vote at the end of the completion of the presentation from the planning board chair.
Okay. So the reason I asked that is since the warrant committee did not vote on this language by the planning board before the meeting, the planning board is making a motion to amend their article. So we don't have a new green sheet, so to speak. Okay, so now Ms. Hall, you want to go back and put your last amendment proposal in here?
There's two. There were two items that came in that we also accepted. It would be a new R, and it would be titled Withdrawal of Application.
Do you have that language,
I do.
Karen?
Could I?
You have a point of order? You can always make a point of
I
order.
think I do. I thought there was a rule that you're supposed to have amendments in writing so that we could see them. If not on a green sheet, then at least on the board in front of us. This is a long and complicated article. By changing a word net new to what? I mean, personally, I need a little time to read the sentence and the paragraph surrounding it to really comprehend what does adding net new to a couple sentences mean. This is really a waste of all of our time here.
Well,
And I don't think we should be voting on it. I think we should refer it back till they complete it.
well, at the moment, we have an amendment that's partially made by the planning board. We can come back to your point in a moment, ma'am. Ms. Hall, could you check this language?
Would one of you be willing to read the changes we've accepted?
Ms. Hall, could you check the
Yes.
language that's here to make sure it's right?
Yes.
And then I'll ask for a second.
Okay. An application for award submitted. Does that look right? What you would submit? Yes.
Okay, are all the changes
Yes.
proposed as an amendment by the planning board now in
Correct.
this document?
Yes, correct.
All right. Do I have a
Thank you all
second?
for your patience. I really appreciate it.
Do I have a second to this motion to amend? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what we have before us is a fairly lengthy set of motions to amend that have been made and voted on by the planning board. Does anyone want to speak to now these motions to amend? Or ask questions of Ms. Hall or members of the planning board? Yes, Ms. O'Donnell.
I would like to, this is Kathleen O'Donnell, Precinct 7. I would like to thank the planning board for considering amendments to their site plan approval. I'm appreciating the fact that you've reduced the amount of time to 120 days. It was my suggestion to see and to include the provision on the termination so that if somebody doesn't use this permit, it lapses after a period of time. So I appreciate you including that. And, you know, obviously I still have issues with, but I appreciate the work and the effort that you've taken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Furs, you've been sitting down there. Did you wish to speak at this point?
Yep, thank you. So I put a lot of these in, and I understand the frustration of why they're in there. As far as maybe not having the context, I can speak to the net new. The net new is simply, right now it says if there's 10 parking spaces, you have to go for site plan review. I thought that if there were already existing 10 parking spaces, you shouldn't have to go for site plan review unless you're adding 10 more. So I put in net new, or I suggested we do that. If there are other questions, I'm happy to address them. The only two things, just for the record, that were not accepted due to being ruled out of scope, as I noted, one of them, the other was color under the design guidelines. I thought that was a bit far-reaching, but I'm willing to concede that point. On the point that I stood up for with the what I believe is a bit arbitrary on section FQ, I would be willing to see how the board does, and if we find that the board is being arbitrary, we can come back to town meeting and take that out at that time. So as it stands right now, I would be willing to support this to move us along. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think I see Mr. Walker and then, yes, ma'am. Mr. Walker, you're recognized.
Leroy Walker, town meeting member, Precinct 10. I appreciate the work. I appreciate the work that the planning board has done and that Mr. Furs and Ms. O'Donnell have done. And at the end of the day, this might be the right article to approve, but I can't think of a time in recent memory where literally 15 amendments were added and we were asked to vote. The warrant committee hasn't considered the amendments. I don't know, they look good in blue, but I don't know what they mean. I need time. And my obligation as a town meeting member, after I depend on the warrant committee for their diligence, my obligation is to understand what I'm voting on. I don't understand what I'm voting on yet. I haven't read it. So I move that we refer this back and we approve it in May. It looks like there's a path to agreement, there's a path to compromise, but we all have an obligation to understand what we're approving. I can't remember when this many amendments were allowed literally a moment ago, and now we're being asked to vote. I move that we refer this back, we vote on it in May. Thank you.
Well, just a moment. The motion to refer can't supersede the motion to amend. So you could advise that we refer it back, but we've got to vote now on this valid motion to amend before the body.
I recommend that we vote down the motion to amend, and I advise that we refer it back. Thank you.
Well stated. Thank you. Okay. I said, yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
This is Marion McKettrick, Precinct 1 town meeting member. Just a few comments. It is a very long, complicated article. I've represented a number of applicants before the Board of Appeals and the Planning Board in parallel processes with site plan review and special permit requirements that generally may be ones that the Board of Appeals has to consider. It's a pretty torturous process as it stands right now because both boards want to know what the other board thinks, and they basically start talking about the same things. So I think clarification and guidance is wise. I think doing work on this, what site plan review is and is not, is a good idea. I honestly feel that there needs to be, that we're going to figure out a way to do this right, and that a lot of progress has been made here by coming up with all of this detail and giving us something to consider. Should it be in the bylaw? Can it be in guidelines in some cases? Would it be better to do that, as Kathleen O'Donnell suggested, so that the guidelines can be changed more easily and you don't have to come back to town meeting for that? So I just want to make a couple of specific comments as illustrations, and I'm going to bring up the restaurant interior example again, because when I saw that inclusion, and I'm very familiar with, you know, discussions that are going on now and concerns about the impact of restaurants on neighborhoods, and I have represented, to give you full disclosure, Novara when it applied for its permit. So I'm familiar with that process and what happened there. The problem with the language that you have in this bylaw right now is that you do not provide any criteria for what that review means. I know you gave an explanation, the planning board did, of what it would do, but that's not good enough for me. You've got to put it in the bylaw. And what you said as an explanation makes good sense to me. But again, if you try to write that now as an amendment, it's yet another amendment that people are going to be kind of confused about, and I think you can come up with good language. I think with just another month or two before the town meeting in May, you could probably come back with a version of this bylaw that works out all of these issues. So, originally when I was going to come to town meeting tonight, I was going to ask for an amendment to just take out that reference, because I didn't know what it meant, and there were no criteria provided in the new site plan review bylaw explaining how you would make that decision. So how do you look at the interior of a restaurant? What is it that you look at as a planning board for this site plan review? I know why you were thinking about it. We can already do some of the things that you wanted to do for Novara. Novara did have conditions, as it happens, about valet parking and about deliveries on the street. The problem with that as a condition by the planning board is that the town controls those locations. And so the site plan approval had to be issued with a condition that said, subject to town approval. And then what happens is if the town doesn't like having it right in front where we originally imagined it to be, or nobody's using it, then the thing sort of fades away and it's not being used. It needs to be revisited, it needs to be fixed. So you raise a legitimate concern and a detail that needs to be attended to carefully, I think, in these applications. I don't think there's any reason why it can't be even under the current site plan review guidelines. But if you put it into your bylaw and make it clear that it should be more explicit, that's helpful. I mean, applicants need to know just exactly what it is that you want them to be, that you want to explain. So, that they want to have you explain. So, in any case, I would be in favor, and with no aspersions on the effort that's being made by the planning board to get a revised site plan review bylaw out, I really would be in favor of sending it back for further study. I think you're pretty close to having what you need. This isn't one of these cases where everybody throws up their hands and says, oh, send it back, I hope I never see it again. That's not the spirit in which I would be asking for this, but I do support the motion to send it back. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to speak to this motion to amend? Yes, Ms. Tagayas.
Hello, fellow town meeting members. My fellow planning board members have asked me to provide some context for this and whether it will influence your decision about sending it back or not. At least it will give you some background to what we're wishing to accomplish here. Site plan approval is something which is in the current zoning bylaws. It's something that I've had 10 years of experience with being on the planning board. I found that it's very vague. And so when we are looking to apply the criteria or even the submission requirements to an application, we would ask for something, and the applicant might say, well, it's not in your regulations, and it's not in the requirements, so we don't have to submit that, really. And so then we're left making decisions without all the information that we would like to see whether there's impacts on the neighbors that are not being mitigated with the proposal. And so what we're trying to do is give a very clear path for both the board in its decision-making, but also for the applicant and for the neighbors. There's not an application that comes before the planning board where neighbors aren't concerned. And they might be concerned about traffic, they might be concerned about noise, they might be concerned about odor, but oftentimes it's hard to know in advance what considerations, what materials we may need in order to address their concerns. So we tried to make it clear in this amendment what we are looking for so that we can be more objective and less subjective in our decision making. I would like to point out too that a lot of this language was included in the MBTA community zoning that passed in December of 2023, including all of these design standards. So we understand that there's some changes that have been suggested, and whether we think that they're easy enough to digest tonight, I will leave to the body, but we do hope that you will give consideration to what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion to amend? Seeing none. So a couple things. We'll go to a vote on the motion to amend. By the way, I wanted to remind everyone, with our electronic voting, we do have a way to go display the vote by member. If 7 members stand up, and if you can make sure you get my attention, stand up, and I can count 7 people, we'll stop, and we'll scroll through the whole list of votes, and you can see how everyone voted. We don't do it on every vote because it would be time consuming, but if someone wants to know in real time, we can do that. So since this is a motion to amend, not the actual zoning article, the motion to amend only requires a majority vote. Before I do that, though, we have the opinion of the planning board because you made it. Warrant Committee, do you have an opinion now on this motion to an amend?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom Caldwell, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, and Chair of your Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee has voted on this and asked that you accept the amendments to the motion. The Warrant Committee appreciates the collaborative effort of the Planning Board, the speakers bringing forward the amendments, and our committee that worked very closely with the Planning Board. I also agree with one of the speakers here. This is a complicated article. The Warrant Committee, while we have lawyers and actuaries and CEOs, we are not municipal land use attorneys or have lots of experience in that realm. We spent an entire evening with the Planning Board and had our own independent review and discussion concerning this. I'd agree again with Member Chugaias. It is complicated, and the Warrant Committee has seen this a little longer than the Planning Board, than this body has. However, based upon our time with this and in speaking with the Planning Board and listening to everyone here tonight, we do believe this is the best product put forward. It offers protection to applicants of this new law by right and also the neighbors. We were very familiar, and part of our discussion related to some of the goings-on in East Milton Square in our main business district concerning both Novara and the Fruit Center, and citizen comments concerning that. Site plan review is instrumental to keeping the town safe and allowing our elected members of the Planning Board to have some say when development is occurring, specifically with restaurants and bars and other establishments. Now the town is changing a bit, as we see from our previous articles, allowing new liquor licenses. We believe there will be an expansion, not a great one, but an expansion of the commercial base in town, and the site plan does provide reasonable guidance for us. So for those reasons, the reasons stated by the Planning Board and 2 of our speakers here who offered amendments, the Warrant Committee asks that you accept the amendments and pass this article as written on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, we'll proceed to the vote on the motion to amend. All in favor of the motion to amend, please signify by pressing 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. Again, majority vote on the motion to amend. The motion to amend passes by a vote of 177 to 35, with 3 abstentions. So now we return back to voting on this amended article you see before you, which requires a 2/3 vote because we're modifying zoning bylaws. At this point, does anyone want to speak to this article as amended? Ms. O'Donnell.
I revive my motion to refer the bylaw back to the planning board for further study.
Sorry, you said you would like to refer it back?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Is there a second?
I make that motion.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Does anyone want to speak to the motion to refer this back to the planning board for further study? Mr. Mullins.
Peter Mullen, Precinct 2. I think it's fair to say that it may be that the Planning Board and the Warrant Committee are familiar with the changes that have just been made. None of us are. There's been no way that any member can read this in context, see if they agree with these changes. The next town meeting is going to be in about 2.5 months. I think we can refer this back, bring it back then, and do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before Ms. Hall, just a second. Does anyone else want to speak? Because you've had a number of discussion points here. Anyone else want to speak to the motion to refer? Yes, Mr. Cocello.
Anthony Ciccello, Precinct 4, town meeting member. This is sort of related to the motion to refer back and not. Maybe it's sort of to the substance of the article, but I think it's relevant. It's something certainly I want to have a better sense of, and others may. You know, I just, from a practical perspective, if I want to put an ADU in my house, whether it's for my parents or something like that, I mean, some people may want to put a detached one back by the pool for Cato Kalin, but you know, just take the example of somebody who has a home and a property that could easily support making an apartment in the house or something over the garage or something like that. How long is this process going to take? What's it going to cost the homeowner to go through this process to be able to move their parents into an apartment? What is the process? Because this site plan review is covering a lot of different things. And is it the same process for that as it is for somebody that's putting in something that's more substantial potentially? So I'm interested in an answer to that, and I think that could affect how some people respond to the motion to refer back.
So 2 questions, sir. How long would the site plan review take for a homeowner, and what's the cost to the homeowner? Thank you. Ms. Hall, you're recognized.
Yes. So when we get to the ADU article, this will be addressed. Site plan approval cannot be used when you're doing an ADU within your house. It's only an addition or a separate detached unit. So just for everybody to know. the site plan review is appropriate for ADUs, but it's the site plan review covers a lot of different aspects. In the ADU language, it clarifies when site plan review can be utilized. So that's a separate issue, but we, as a planning board, would accept the motion to defer back. We want this to be something that that town meeting unanimously approves, and if folks don't feel like that they have time to review all of these amendments, we will accept that motion to refer back and bring it back in May. So everyone has a chance to read it. So.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion to refer before I go ask the warrant committee for their opinion? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Felton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Deborah Felton, Town Meeting Member,
Get
Precinct.
close to the mic, please.
Deborah Felton, Town Meeting Member of Precinct 2. So it says on the first page of Article 10, it says the following activities and use require site plan approval, and that's small b1 says and ADUs. So are ADUs, does this apply to ADUs or not? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Hall?
Yes, when it's an addition or when it's a detached unit only. So not within the original property.
Ms. Hall, perhaps you could clarify. I think there's members have some questions about that. Mr. Mello, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator at town meeting. First of all, I want to say that the scope, and this is one of the things that we discussed briefly with the MLU, the scope of site plan review for ADUs is the subject of ongoing, evolving discussions. The recently promulgated ADU regs do contemplate that, subject to certain limitations, you can subject ADUs to site plan review. The conditions have to be reasonable and, with clear and objective standards and the like. The site plan review bylaw that's before the town meeting body does it, at least as I read it, applied to ADUs. But I think, as a practical matter, I don't want to speak for anybody, but insofar as Ms. Hall just stated, if I understood correctly, that the planning board was amenable to the motion to refer back for further study. I think it's sort of an academic discussion, respectfully, but I'm happy to address if anyone has any questions about the scope of site plan review as it pertains to accessory dwelling units. But I think for purposes of this discussion, if everyone's amenable to the concept of referring it back to the planning board for further study, it's not something that we need to belabor for now, respectfully.
Mr. McKettrick, views to speak to the motion to refer without getting into all the substance of the article.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe McKettrick, Precinct 1. Yes, I would just want to see this referred back at this point. I think many members in the audience are hopelessly confused about what has happened, and we would all benefit very nicely for reconsideration at the next meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mullins, you're about to rise.
Peter Mullen, Precinct 2. I think what I'm raising is a point of order. The planning board is the board that submitted this article to the town meeting. They now say that they're willing to send it back, review it, and bring it back in May. I don't think there's anything to vote on. If they are withdrawing the article that they submitted, I think there's nothing for the body to vote on, and we should move on to the next article.
Well, good point. Our bylaws actually have a specific clause that say we must act on all the articles that are in the warrant. And I see a thumbs up from my predecessor, Mr. Walsh. So we're not able to withdraw an article. The citizens expect us to take some type of action. Now, with that, If anyone wants to speak to the motion to refer, otherwise I'll go to the warrant committee. I see none. We'll go to the warrant committee for their opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom Caldwell, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, and Chair of your Warrant Committee. While the Warrant Committee discussed this matter over many nights, the conversation was very similar to some cited here in the body. It is a very long, complicated article. We obviously, in speaking with Town Council and the Planning Board and amongst ourselves, we felt very confident in the product. However, being sensitive to the needs of this body, and the complexities of the language and the length, the Warrant Committee is asking that you that we join in the Planning Board and ask that the matter be sent back for further study.
Okay. With that, a motion to refer only requires a majority vote, so we'll go to the vote. All those in favor of the motion to refer back to the Planning Board, please signify by pressing 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion refer carries, voted 202 to 10 to 2 abstain. Very well. With that, we'll go to Article 11. You also have a green sheet, should have a green sheet in your hand from Article 11 that was available up on the table. We'll put that green sheet up. With the green sheet, I think something similar has happened. We've had some changes that came in, I believe, by the, from the Planning Board and by the Warrant Committee, so that's why they've been approved as a green sheet. The Warrant Committee doesn't need to make any comments to this. I think I'll start with Ms. Hall to recognize you about this ADU article.
Meredith Hall, Chair of the Planning Board, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. This will be much simpler, I promise. So after we drafted our original ADU article, the HLC actually came out with their regulations. So we were then able to send our article to, which thanks to Peter, was sent it to the municipal law unit to review. When they reviewed it, they came back with some very minor things, and we thought we'd rather address it now so everything would be clean going through to the AG. The first thing, because we had to draft this really in record speed because the ADU was going to be passed before the regulations were finalized. So when we put in the first 2 items, the amendments are in the definitions section. It's a small tweaking of language because we took from the website, the state website, their definitions, and then at some point they tweaked some of their wording. So we just wanted our definitions for lot and single-family dwelling to match exactly. So those 2 items have very slight amendments on those. I'm sorry? Oh, can you back up? Yeah.
Also, could we, well, I was going to get there as soon as our clerk is back.
It's in the
yes.
definitions section. Yes, you can find it.
Ms. Bothell, could we go to 150%, please? Thank you.
Under dwelling unit, this is exactly what the state provides, the Department of Housing, so we wanted that to be consistent.
I think she has to make some slight edit, and we're back. There, that was your point on
yes,
lot,
that's
right?
It. Yep.
Okay.
And then the principal dwelling. So this is just to be consistent.
Are there any other changes you wish to highlight for the body?
So one change is referring to the minimum parking, which is under C, item 9. So if it is outside of a half mile of a transit area, you can require one parking space. You cannot require more than one parking space. A homeowner with an ADU could put as many parking spaces as they want, but we can only require one. So this language, one of the comments that came back from MLU was to take out a minimum, because that may look confusing and it may look like we would be requiring more than one unit. So we just wanted to take that out so there's no confusion. So 9 would just say one parking space shall be provided for each ADU.
And were there any other changes, ma'am?
Okay. And then, yeah, if you scroll down, design standards, keep going. Yep. This was just the green line. I think that was it then. Was there one other, or was it 3? Yeah, could you go up to C3? We might have missed one there. Oh, yes, right, that sentence right here. This was just to confirm language that we had put in. There was a comment where we had written, no ADU shall be separated from the principal dwelling unit through condominium conversion or be held in separate ownership from the principal dwelling, and each ADU shall remain accessory to the principal dwelling. So that was language that MLU just wanted us to reiterate and reconfirm. So those are the only changes.
Thank you.
Proposed amendments.
Now, I'll ask the same question. These are changes the planning board has voted on and approved?
Correct.
Mr. Caldwell, just briefly, did the warrant committee vote on these changes before town meeting tonight?
Tom Caldwell, town meeting member, precinct 6 and chair of the warrant committee. We have not yet voted on this, Mr. Moderator. We're in that process now.
Okay, so that makes this an amendment on the floor by the planning board, duly made. Is there a second? I hear a second. Okay. By the way, some may be asking, how did we get here with all these amendments? The reason is, any one of you are authorized to go make amendments, minor amendments from the floor, or in the case of Mr. Furs, he submitted to me a number of amendments within the timeline. I had a chance to rule on them in scope before the meeting started. We had a chance to share those with the planning board. They were able to collaborate on coming up with an approach. So whether it was one amendment or 8 amendments, that's within the right of any of you members to do that. It's up to you to decide if those are too many or too few. But they followed the process to get to where we are now. Now, with these items that came in from the municipal law unit, we received those in on Friday. Our attorney reviewed those with me. I said they're clearly in scope. They reviewed those with the planning board. They couldn't get all of those through the warrant committee before tonight. So the planning board was trying to comply with the recommendations of the municipal law unit. So that's how we got to this motion to amend right now, as opposed to having it go through the full warrant committee process, just to explain where we are right now. I hope that's clear. Yes, Mr. Mello.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of town meeting. Just to be crystal clear, I think it's probably obvious, but just so there's no confusion, these changes weren't made by the municipal law unit. They were made by me based on my discussions with Margaret Hurley, who senior, I think her title is senior counsel on housing and municipal law, something like that. within the AG's office, formerly the head of the municipal law unit. But anyway, so just to be clear, these were changes that I suggested based on my conversations with her.
So you consulted, you made some changes, brought them to the planning board, and now they've adopted them.
Exactly.
Okay.
I just wanted to be clear that no one had formed the impression that that Margaret or the municipal law unit actually gave us this language. They flagged these issues. I formulated language based on those conversations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's comforting to know that our attorney is on a first-name basis with someone in the Attorney General's office. So, I see, Mr. Furs, you are wishing to speak to this motion to amend?
Not to amend.
Not to amend. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Lori Stillman, Precinct 2. I have a question for the moderator for a moment. Did you mention that we could offer a minor amendment on the floor, or do you have a requirement that they be pre-approved?
If you have some language you'd like to propose, for example, small friendly to the planning board, we could look at that.
That's great. Thank you. So my question to the planning board, I'd like to refer to page 4 under design standards, number 7, where it reads that energy efficient features and sustainable materials are encouraged but not required. I'd like to understand your thinking about why you wouldn't require some energy efficient and sustainable features in building. To me, it feels like we certainly know about enough of the environmental challenges that we are facing, and not to take advantage of this now seems like a missed opportunity. And in addition, you know, for many people with ADUs, they're looking to ADUs because it's a more affordable option for them. And by offering, you know, energy efficient and sustainable features, we could potentially be making ADUs more affordable for more people. So I guess maybe I'll just ask that question first, and then I have a little friendly amendment if it makes sense.
Thank you, ma'am. And Ms. Hall, you're recognized.
Good evening, Meredith Hall, Chair of the Planning Board. Great question, because that was part of our discussion. We again came back to what we can require of an ADU under, again, like what can we require for a homeowner? We can really only require that a homeowner puts in what is in the building code and is what is in the stretch energy codes. So we can't mandate that, as wonderful as it would be to say you have to have solar, you have to do certain things. That's not something we can mandate, but we at least wanted to encourage that because we do believe in encouraging the sustainable principles. So.
Okay, then I won't offer a friendly amendment in that regard because it doesn't look like it would hold water. But I do have another possible friendly amendment that I'd like to offer. And it reads as follows, and then I'd like to explain the rationale. It would be a number 8, and it would say, it is recommended that radon-resistant construction techniques for new construction will be incorporated into the design of the ADU. And again, we're saying it is recommended, it is not mandatory. And I'd like to say why I'm recommending that. Radon is an invisible radioactive gas. It is undetectable by those of us living in those dwelling units unless we test radon with a testing kit. Radon is the #1 cause of lung cancer for non-smokers, and Milton has high radon rates. A number of jurisdictions around the country that have high radon rates incorporate radon-resistant construction techniques into their standards. It costs very little to do, and it prevents people from having to mitigate radon later on. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health in January did its first review of the existence of radon in different communities. And in Massachusetts, in Milton, they found that 1 in 2 households had higher than recommended radon rates, and 1 in 5 houses had very high radon rates. This could help to mitigate the problem by taking a preventive step. Again, it wouldn't be required, but it wouldn't hurt to put that language in there. So I would like to recommend that as a friendly amendment, and if it's not accepted, to at least encourage any new ADUs to incorporate those mitigation procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So first off, we don't need a second on a friendly amendment, which is why I didn't ask. Could you hand the language to the planning board so they can see exactly what you've suggested? Ms. Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you. The planning board would accept that friendly amendment. Yes.
Okay.
Included.
So can you now hand that to the warrant committee clerk, since we've now modified this amendment so the body can see what the change is? While we're doing that, does anyone else wish to speak to the motion to amend? Otherwise, we'll wait for Ms. Bosworth to put this up so you can see it. And then we'll ask, since the planning board has accepted, we'll ask the warrant committee for their opinion on the friendly amendment. Ms. Stillman, did we get that language right up there? I'm looking around for Ms. Stillman to see if we got the language right. There, yes, thumbs up, very good. Okay, we'll end debate on that. Warrant committee, if you could take a vote on your opinion on the friendly. Yes, ma'am. Do you have a question or a point of order?
I have a question.
A question to me on...
Directed to you, Diane DeTullio, Agostino, Precinct 8, since I'm knowledgeable on this, and I agree Milton is very high in radon. It's called radon mitigation, not radon-resistant techniques. That's the technical construction term. So maybe you could check with the building department or something to get the right terminology in there.
Well, we're making law here, so
Right.
I can't. So, Ms. Stillman, perhaps you offered this amendment, this friendly. Perhaps you could give your reason why you chose this language.
There's a difference between doing radon mitigation and what I am suggesting as incorporating radon-resistant techniques. Radon-resistant techniques is an official term. It's a preventive way of addressing radon. Mitigation, the definition of mitigation is to get rid of a problem already. This is a preventive precaution, and it is the correct terminology. I looked it up and I spoke with the Mass Department of Public Health Radons program. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Warrant Committee, do you have an opinion?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom Caldwell, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, and Chair of your Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee asks the body accept the amendments as written.
Okay, so with that, I don't see anyone coming down for the motion to amend as presented by the Planning Board and accepted by and confirmed by the Warrant Committee and amended with a friendly amendment. So again, a motion to amend only requires a majority vote. Yeah, yes, yes.
Tom Caldwell, again, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, and Chair of your Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee would like to point out a Scrivener's error. And not trying to make things more difficult here, but we've just had a printed warrant, and we have green sheets, obviously, that reflect the amendments that we're talking about here. On, if I may, Mr. Moderator, in Section C, General Conditions and Requirements, and go down to paragraph 7, on your green sheet, it indicates a 6-month time period. On the matter on the article in the warrant and on the screen here, it's a 12-month. So the Warrant Committee wanted to point that out to you and clarify that it is a 12-month, and the 6th was a Scrivener's error.
So you're saying this document, as presented here, was approved by the Warrant Committee before tonight's meeting?
Correct.
Okay,
and
so you
what is print?
So you corrected what was voted on at a prior meeting in the green sheet prior to tonight, and then presented that as your modified motion before the body with 12 months.
No, Mr. Moderator. What I'm trying to say, if I'm not being articulate, is the 6-month period on the green sheet was never considered by the Warrant Committee. It was 12 months from from the moment the article was presented to us and it was reviewed. So we are, as the Warrant Committee, is pointing out to the body that what is printed on the green sheet is incorrect and was never considered. And we don't want to float the idea that was part of any discussions by the Warrant Committee.
Okay, I stand corrected. So what's printed on the screen is what the Warrant Committee voted on and approved, the 12 months.
Yes, in conjunction with the Planning Board.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll now go to the motion to amend. If we could put up the poll. Again, majority vote. All those in favor of the motion to amend, 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion to amend passes by votes of 207 to 7, 1 abstain. Now we'll return back to this article as amended. And Mr. Furs, I think you were sitting first on this. Would you like to speak?
Brian Furs, Precinct 10. I have one major concern with this article and a few smaller ones. I'm going to tell you what they are. Then I'm going to make a motion to send it back because I don't want to get into what we were just in a few minutes ago. And then if you vote to not send it back, I'm going to get up and make some amendments. My major issue with this is with section E2. And this hopefully addresses some of the question that one of the previous speakers asked about how long it would take to add an ADU to your property. It says creation of an ADU and an expansion of an existing principal dwelling or an attached accessory structure shall require site plan approval by the planning board in compliance with the provision of this section. Based on Massachusetts state law now, an ADU is a by right use. If you want to add a structure to your property that meets with all of the zoning regulations and it happens to have an ADU in it, I don't understand why it has to go back for site plan review. If it does have to go back for site plan review, if you want to put an addition on your house or put a garage next to your house with an apartment over it for your child or your spouse or your parent or whoever, you can refer back to what will probably be our new site plan guidelines in May from everything I just heard. There are at least A through P that you need to get through, and it's probably A through Q, which is the points that basically gives the planning board any discretion that they want to ask for anything. There's also a number of requirements, including establishing where your dumpster is going to go, having topography done for your property, and it takes 6 months. At least, or 4 months, excuse me, 120 days if it was as was proposed to be revised. It's a long process and it will cost thousands of dollars to get a by right use in a potentially by right structure through a site plan approval. I don't understand why we're doing that. So that is I don't think we should include that, and I think we should send it back for further study, for discussion about that, because it's a huge problem for me that that's in here. The other one I have a concern about is the 12 months that was just discussed. I understand that people are concerned about Airbnb and VRBO, but 12 months is a long time. If you wanted to rent to a student going to Curry College, if you wanted to rent to a traveling nurse, you would not be able to do that under this bylaw. It limits it to 12 months as a minimum rental period. And the third is just a minor point, which is that in section, sorry, I've gotten into two different bylaws now. Section C, number 9, it's on the parking that we discussed a little while ago. In the definition section, we define a transit station: subway station, commuter rail station, ferry terminal, or bus station. In section 9, rather than use the definition of transit station, we again say bus station, commuter rail station, or trolley stop. We neglect to put in commuter rail station or ferry terminal, and we add trolley stop. I'm not going to wonder why we're doing that, but I have some ideas. So in any case, I would suggest that we use the definition, or we just use the defined term down there as opposed to having a new definition. So in section 9, I would be looking to add more than 0.5 miles from a transit station. All of that said, based on what just happened a little while ago, I'm going to make a motion that we send this back for further study to be reconsidered for May, and I'll be back in a few minutes if that doesn't pass.
Motion is made and seconded on a motion to refer. Now, some speakers have come down. I think you wanted to talk to, not the motion to refer now, but about the article itself, right? Sir, you wanted to speak to the motion to refer?
I will talk about the motion to refer. So, Andres Lessing, Precinct 8. And I had some concerns with the article that I think could be addressed by sending it back. On the section E, it says that it would require site plan review process. And in section F, it talks about filing fees, but it doesn't define the amounts. And I am concerned that both these things are put in place, not well defined, to actually prevent ADUs in our town. So I hope we can address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Caldwell, on the motion to refer? I'm sorry, that shouldn't have called you that. So, sir.
Yeah, Tom Callahan, Precinct 4.
Yes, Callahan. Thank you.
So, pretty much agree with everything Brian just said. So I would be in favor of sending this back. Just furthermore on this, it's my understanding, and I'm reading from the HLC regs, that we cannot require of an ADU something we don't require of a single family. Single families do not need site plan review.
And it's right here in HLC's regulations that we can't put an additional restriction on an ADU site plan review. Oh,
Yep, little closer to the mic, please.
my wife told me I was yelling last night, so I trying to modulate. So from the HLC regulations, as I read it, and I'm not a lawyer, but it says an additional restriction that we don't also apply to single-family homes. If you're building a single-family home from scratch in Milton, we do not require site plan review, but we would under ADU. So for that reason and all the other reasons, I support sending this back.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion to refer? Seeing none, a motion to refer is a majority vote. We'll put up the poll. I'm sorry, I didn't check with the planning board. What's your opinion? Sorry, jumped ahead.
Thank you. So as Peter Mello has explained, site plan approval is allowed under for an ADU. One of the things that I meant to mention is the site plan approval. One of the things that it's utilized with is anything that falls under the Dover Amendment. For those of you who, some may know, some may not, but a Dover Amendment is, would be an example, a preschool that was built, like the Goddard School, where the Hoosick Club was, the Gardner School. Those are Dover Amendments. A church would be a Dover Amendment. That when we had the structure on Robbins that was, some people were very concerned about, we really could not reject that, but we could put approvals on that, and that was subject to site plan review. The ADUs have been classified under the Dover Amendment, and so for that reason, site plan review is allowed, as again Peter Mello has stated. What we have in the site plan review, when you all go back and look at it again, is waivers. So because it's in there, is because site plan review has certain things that we're looking for, it doesn't mean that everything will be utilized for specifically in ADU site. What site plan review is helpful with is when somebody's putting a structure, a new structure in their backyard, which is you know, most likely a residential neighborhood with neighbors. It is helpful sometimes to come before the board and say, well, have you thought about this? Is this something that you might consider doing, because this would be helpful? This would be less detrimental to a neighbor. This is just something that would be a guiding tool, but not necessarily everything would be implemented, and I would expect the process to be incredibly swift with any ADUs that came before us. So that is the 12-month, I'm sorry. So we were looking, because this is part of the ADU regulations, it does not need to be owner occupied. We were thinking of what we would want to be consistent with when you go to any of the rental properties in town, would all ask you to sign a 12-month lease. When you go through looking at MLS, that is what is typical. This is something that HLC, it has not been finalized. We don't have the final regulations on, they've said you cannot have short term, but it has not been defined, and we're still looking, and there may be changes on what is allowed by municipalities. So this is a placeholder. It can always be amended, and it's always something that a landlord can also waive. They can also put in a lease term that they would be able to be let out of their lease at an earlier time. So this was just a placeholder on this, and I think that may be all the questions. Was there other questions that I didn't answer?
Would you have an opinion on the motion to refer?
I would have to ask
the planning board
on that. Yeah. Oh, the definition of the transit. Yes, so we did have a conversation around the definition of the transit, and people preferred the trolley stop. Was that answer on that?
Ma'am, does the planning board have an opinion on the motion to refer?
The planning board would not accept that motion. We would like to see this passed. Again, we have the regulation went into effect already. This is something that we can always amend if there's changes. Peter Mello, as he has described, this is very fluid. All of this is happening. There's a lot of things that have not been finalized, but I think it's better that we have something in place that we can amend rather than not having anything at all and exposing. So we would like to have a vote on this. So.
Thank you. And warrant committee? Yeah, we're done with debate just on the motion to refer, and then we'll come back.
Tom Caldwell, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, and Chair of the Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee has voted on this and respectfully requests that you vote no on the motion to send back. Not to go through each and every one, but for the reasons articulated by the Chair of the Planning Board. Those are the reasons we give. This law has been in effect for approximately 21 days. As indicated by the Chair, this is a fluid process. This is certainly go back and be amended. We did have a very vigorous debate regarding the rental period, and eventually decided to agree on the 12-month period. This could, the main reason that we agreed with the 12 months, obviously this is up to landlords, but for continued continuity in our neighborhoods. But those are the reasons as to what was pointed out as to the 12-month. But again, we reiterate for the reasons stated by the planning board that you vote no on the motion to send back.
Okay. Now we'll go to the vote on the, yes, ma'am? Yeah, I think we'll proceed with the vote at this point. Okay, if we have the poll up, again, a majority vote, all those in favor of the motion to refer this back to the planning board for further study, 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion to refer back carries, a vote of 131 to 82 with 1 abstention. Okay, so we've closed out Article 11 now with a motion to refer back. With that, we'll go to Article 12. Article 12 also has a green sheet. Again, you should have picked one up. It is recommended in the green sheet that the town vote to refer the article back to the select board for further study. Again, as a green sheet, it was approved by the warrant committee with that recommendation. Does anyone wish to speak to this article to refer back for further study? Yes.
Thank you. Erin Bradley, Select Board Member, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 4. The Select Board voted earlier today, and we'd like for this to be referred back. Easy peasy. Brief discussion.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion to refer back? Would anyone mind if I took a voice vote? Go for it, in the interest of time. All in favor of motion to refer this article back to the Select Board for further study, please signify by saying aye. Aye. I think I heard you say. Opposed, no. It's unanimous. Thank you. We'll go to Article 13. Another green sheet, if everyone has the green sheet on 13. This is light trespass. However, there has been a change. And I think I'll go to Ms. Bradley for an explanation. Now, I'll read the recommendation. It was recommended that the town vote to refer the article back to the Select Board for further study. That's just a recommendation. And now we'll have Ms. Bradley speak. What would you like to speak to, Ms. Bradley?
Article 13, and the Select Board voted earlier today to propose an amendment.
Okay. We'll tell you what, since we have a motion to refer on the floor, I think we need...
No, not for 12. 12 can go away.
Sorry, I'm on 13, I think, right?
Yep, so 13, oh yes, sorry, yes.
Yes. So 13, we have a motion on the floor by the warrant committee to refer it back. But would you like to say that is the opinion of the Select Board you would vote against that? Because you want to pass this now? Is that it?
We didn't, ooh, sweet baby Jesus. We didn't take that. Yes, we voted yes with one abstention. So yes, we do want to. That's what I said. We don't got our ducks in a row either. We did not vote on referring it back. We voted on the amendment that was brought forward.
So you would like, is the opinion of the Select Board or the vote of the Select Board to recommend to the body to vote no
Correct.
On referring back because
Correct.
the Select Board does want to then discuss the article for passage tonight. Is that
Correct, with the amendment, yes.
And then you want to amend your language.
Correct.
Okay, we'll get to the amendment in a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Cicchello? Yes, sir. You are correct about that. So, what we do is, let me think for a moment. So that would mean that we should be able to modify the article on the floor.
Select Board. I got you.
So, slight difference. If the warrant committee had recommended a no vote, then yes, we'd be voting on the article as printed. However, they didn't do that. They said send it back, which is a different motion. That's why we're going to first act on sending it back or not. So, it sounds like the Select Board has said recommends a no vote on the motion to refer.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Does anyone, we already know what the warrant committee thinks. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion to refer this back?
Peter Mullen, Precinct 2. I'd like to hear what the Select Board wants to change in this before we decide whether to send it back or not.
Very good question. Select Board.
I would love to address that. Can I, Mr.
Yes, please,
Moderator?
please do, ma'am.
Okay, great. So there was some concern and some confusion around parts of this. And first, I just want to say that this actually came to me when I was running for Select Board, when we were fighting the LED billboard that was trying to go up on Route 93 over by the marshlands. So that's how I got involved with this. Unfortunately, I'm not a big environmentalist. I'm getting there. So this was not my ball of wax, and I learned a lot of things. The only things that we're changing in Article 13 is if you go, we gave it to the warrant committee. So if you want to put it on the screen, right, Mr. Milano? We're just working on the enforcement piece of this and the violations piece. Now I have to put my glasses on because I'm old. So I can say that the enforcement piece, there was some issues around the process. We wanted to ensure that anybody who might have a light trespass had a valid and amount of time that they could rectify the situation. So the way it works is that if you have a light trespass, so if somebody has a light on their house that's shining into my kid's bedroom and my kid can't sleep, which means I can't sleep, I can go to the select board and file a complaint. You go to the select board office, you file the complaint, and then the select board tells the property owner within 10 days of receiving that there has been a light trespass filed on them. That's in writing. And then during that, they request any documentation or responses from the property owner that deems that the lighting is fine. Within 45 days of receiving the original, there's confusion. Within 45 days of receiving the original complaint, the select board is to hold a meeting to review the yeah. I think it's got to go, this is huge. Okay, to review whether or not it actually is a light trespass. The select board then will take the following things into consideration. These are just some suggestions. They can take in more information if they would like. These are items that are found in the general laws about what constitutes light nuisance, which is about the same thing as light trespass. The lumens that are outlined down here, I had no idea what a lumen was until about 3 years ago. They are measured by a little fun measuring tool. They're $29 on Amazon, so they will not break the bank. And basically, these are the regular I don't want to say boundaries, but the regular requirements of our everyday lights. So your porch light, your sidewalk lights, your pool lights, my cafe lights that I have in the backyard, all of those fall within these parameters. I will say that the 1300 under the security lights for lumens, that is a massively high output. You can look that up, Google, it's your best friend. And that's why we're requiring that would be on a light sensor. We're also saying that the select board would like for any complaints to be calculated by that light measurer so that they could also take that into consideration. When it comes to the violations, we added a portion that said that if somebody is found to be in violation of this, they have 30 days to rectify the situation. And then after that, the first day would be a warning, the second day would be $50, and the following day would be $100. We did take out the piece that says the town shall have the right to bring a civil action, no civil actions, to enforce the provisions of this bylaw, so we took all that out right there. The other thing that was brought up to me was that, there was a lot of questions about a run on the select board, and trust me, we don't want everybody and their neighbor to come and visit us. We actually think that we are all neighbors here, and that most of the time these things can be worked out among our neighbors. But every once in a while, things can't be worked out. Every once in a while, we go to our neighbors, we talk to them at length, and it still doesn't work. Right now, there is no mechanism in our town for anybody to take any measures on this. The only thing that somebody could do is actually take someone to court for light nuisance, which would be an attorney, which I'll be one soon, so you can hire me. So you'd need an attorney, you'd need to go to court, it would be a process, and it's even more adversarial than just having it dealt with by the select board. So those were the changes we made on this. This really came about because folks wanted to be able to have a remedy for anything that was happening within their neighborhoods. And if we had that billboard go up on Route 93 and it was shining in somebody's window, they could absolutely file a light trespass on that. So those are the changes we made. Thank you for putting this up there. Mr. Moderator, I don't know what the next step is, so I'm turning to you.
Okay, I want to maybe summarize. I think we had some conversations last week. At that point, the select board supported motion to refer back. I think you saw if you added some language on enforcement, then the select board thinks you've now improved this motion so it's worthy of appearing before the body.
Correct.
And that's why you're saying vote no on refer back, so you can bring this before the body and we can vote on it.
Correct.
Is that the summary of what happened?
That is correct, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you. So I'm clear. All right. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion to refer? Mr. Kelly, you're sitting down here, but for something else. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sean Fahey, Precinct 9, Town Meeting Member. I want to speak to the enforcement component of this. It's typical if our members look at the agenda of any select board meeting, glare, that is much more of a building department type of enforcement. I think it's improper to have a select board enforcing something of this nature. It just doesn't make good sense to me. Just not their, it's not really their purview, that type of assessment, observing lights and whether or not they meet or don't meet.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion to refer? Yes, ma'am. There's a little trigger handle.
Yeah. Does
There
that
you go. You got
better?
it. Okay.
Good evening, Ellen Stoddard, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. I wanted to speak just as my own person getting more familiar with light trespass. I really became familiar with this probably in around to clarify what the process was in order to file some sort of complaint, and I found out that we don't have a residential. So here we are now, and I find it interesting that we have fencing regulations in the town that say all fencing must be in ways to reduce nuisance and disruption to our neighbors. And I also noticed language in Article 10 tonight on page 31 about outdoor lighting in the site design standards that says light levels shall not exceed the maximum design guidelines defined by INESNA, which is an engineering society, and shall provide illumination necessary for safety and convenience while preventing glare and certifications. So it seems like that's the direction that we want to be heading. And we have an opportunity tonight to vote yes and get this light trespass ordinance in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, yes? If anybody else wishes to speak, if you could come on down, I'll try to get a list and then we'll go. Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Mark Croninger, Precinct 7. Or Miss Musto wants to be Jack B. Nimble, driving around town with a luminaire measuring device. The other thing I think that should go back to house out of my window. On the other side of town where there's much more land and stuff, it's a totally different thing. So in our neighborhood, and we don't want people every 15 minutes using this if you have a nasty neighbor to drive everybody else insane. I think it needs to go back to further study. I think the select board is not the right body. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Moderator, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
There are other provisions in here that actually talk about this. It's not just with my enjoyment of my house. So you look back and you read the definitions, it actually spells out a lot of what to you. And light pollution is a thing. Like, it's not, it really is. It is a problem. It is a problem that many small towns, and I still consider us a small town, are having. Just to make sure that that was outlined, so people wouldn't just be upset and running around with these, like the previous speaker commented.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to speak the motion to? Okay. The warrant committee has said they've asked that one, if we could take a break, they'd like to take 5 minutes and consult privately because this is in the room. Can anyone read what that clock says over there? 9:42. Let's be back at about 9:55, warrant committee. 5 minutes. Okay, we'll be back at 9:50. Recommendation to refer back.
Hi, hello, town meeting. Tom Caldwell, the amendments as proposed by the select board. We had a very good discussion, and I know you've all read our comment. It is very long and detailed, like some of our articles here tonight. But after speaking with select board member Bradley, and select board member Bradley will comment on that after. There are a few little small things that we mentioned in a comment. I'm not getting into them. I don't think we need to. What he had with us, it's not the idea of the article or what it's trying to accomplish. We agree that, you know, there are some problems in town that need to be addressed. How was a better public process and allow people from the town, houses of worship, schools, commercially, we can make it better, we should. But the public process was our sticking point, and that's why we're asking, nor can we to any one committee or board. But this issue has come up in the past. Some of you may remember, maybe like 10 years, and we asked that you send it back for further study.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Aaron Bradley, Select Board, asking that it be sent back. I'm also going to formally ask my colleagues that we come up with a plan to vet some of these things that come before us. There's been a lot, and we don't believe that it's the warrant committee's, it's not their place to do our work for us, where we should be vetting things as well. And so I just want to say that that's something that I'm committed to do with the time that I'm left here, is to try and come up with a plan for us to start vetting these things better, so it's night.
With that, I'll take a gamble on another voice vote. All in favor of referring this back to the Select Board for further study, please signify by, yes, sir?
Darnell Turner, Precinct 1. I rise to move that we do that before we move on to next votes, because we have members of the board here, as well as we might lose people if we take this into third.
Moved and seconded. It's a procedural vote. I'll take a quick voice vote. All in favor of discussing Article 7 now instead of after 15, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I'll pick up Article 7. With that, let me go back to Article 7. But recommended that the town of Milton appropriate the amount of $1,500,000 for the purpose of paying costs of a feasibility. Mr. O'Rourke, who I think is here, who's the chairman of the school building committee. Mr. O'Rourke, you're recognized.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sean O'Rourke, town meeting member, Precinct 8, chair of the school building committee. Slide, please. Sorry. So in December of this year, the town was sent a letter by the Mass School Building Authority that the MSBA actually visited the Collycott-Cunningham School and were guided by the principals, Principal Redden, Principal Concannon, influenced their review of our statement of interest in April. They actually were able to see some of the conditions that the students experience. What it does is in May, it opens us up into start the core program, which is what you'll see is Module 1 coming up. The unique thing of having a town meeting at this time right now, it allows us to get a head start on this. So with MSBA, they break down the way they construct schools, design them and construct them into 8 modules that you see here. What we're about to enter is Module 1. Next slide, please. Within each of these modules are this town meeting, what we're looking at doing is accomplishing 2 of those subcomponents. One was Article 6 last night, which was formation of the school building committee, and the one that's before you now is 4. While these steps look sequential, they just have longer durations as you kind of went through it. Next slide. So the ask for $1.5 million, how do we come up with it? MSBA, off the numbers that are there, you have to look at the percentages. And for the most part, architects are about a 1% of the construction cost, and the owner's project manager is about 0.5%. So when we looked at that, next slide, please. As part of this project. So the overall construction cost, not the program cost, was about 129 million. The program cost, as everyone knows, was about 173 million. But on that 129 million, if you do 1.5% for it, 1.9 million ask. For us, we understand that we've already done a lot of this work. We had previous funding allocated to us. So for us, we felt 1.5 million was a right number that we should be using. So I'm just, educating the body on how we arrived at. Remember, is 45% of this cost is eligible for reimbursement. So we're not asking for a full 1.5 million. Over time, we will get reimbursed. What's shown there at 675,000. This is an authorization to issue debt. This isn't similar to the articles that were passed for the funding for Cunningham. This is similar to it. 45% of it is going to be reimbursed. As time is money. So the quicker we can progress through these modules, the less expensive the overall project will be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone wish to speak to this article? Yes, sir.
Cornish, Precinct 10 town meeting member. I can recognize how hard that the SBC has been classroom space to take care of the current problem with overcrowding. My question is for the select board and for the SBC. Has commissioned an outside independent firm to, or consultant to determine what is the projected number of recent demographic report that said that this year the number of high school graduates, even as much as 17% here in the Northeast. So I'm just wondering if part of this $1.5 million could be spent on really students we're going to be talking about over the next 10 and 15 years before we build this building. Thank you.
Understood. Mr. O'Rourke, could you speak to that question?
Enrollment projections that they do. The district uses NESDEC. He shows it flat. And this has come up on a number of occasions, and the reality is we're so overcrowded, accurate, but in the long term, very inaccurate, and that's essentially how we've ended up where we are. So to answer the question.
Thank you. Does that satisfy you, Mr. Cornish, as an independent agency?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Fahey, you're recognized. And Mr. Fahey, if you could also identify.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sean Fahey, Precinct 9, town meeting member and a member of the Planning Board. A couple of questions for Sean, and I would provide what would be included within it. There are a few words written in here describing some of the components of it, but it is 1.5 million, so it's a substantial amount of money. Appreciate that. Second question. We mentioned that they visited Cunningham and Collycott. Did they visit all of the schools in Milton, or did they visit only Cunningham and Collycott? And then my third question is, as we read, understand the role of the MSBA Board of Directors, because I'm just going to read the last couple sentences here. Grant amount for the town, and the project will be submitted to the town meeting and to voters for approval. I'd like to understand what that means. Submitted to town meeting for approval. So if we could, and whether that's Sean or the warrant committee who wrote those particular comments, if somebody could explain that to us.
So as far as number one, and correct me if I go off, Sean, the deliverable, essentially what you'd be getting from Module 1, or from the feasibility study, which happens in Module year on our own, with our own architect and OPM. So essentially, Module 1 is all the paperwork to set us up. Module with MSBA get chosen, And then essentially from there, we work through a number of options. So it's not, we're just picking the option that we ran with before and running with that feasibility report. They'll have plans similar to the exercises we've been doing up to this point now. Question, they come to visit, they only visit the school associated with the statement of interest. So that's why they didn't go to all the schools.
But his other question was, will this apply?
The application letter that we got allows us to create a new elementary school or a new middle school. If the intent is found to do a new middle school, as we've talked about, that would then...
Are you familiar with what the role of the MSBA board is and how it influences what comes to town meeting?
I have not, yeah, I have not gone through the process yet.
Warrant committee, do you have that answer, or does someone else?
Member, Precinct 6 and Chair of the Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee would like to defer to our town administrator to address the details of this.
Good evening, and good to see everybody again. So the MSBA process is very collaborative. Especially undergo a review by both MSBA staff and MSBA consultants. Review comments are supplied to the town, to the architect and the OPM to evaluate and review and potentially incorporate. There are 3 board of directors votes required now that we're in the program. The board of directors will vote to accept Milton into the feasibility study phase, where we begin with owner's project management procurement, designer procurement, and then actually studying the project. The first report, the preliminary design program, is kind of that big step back on the table. As Mr. O'Rourke pointed out, there are a couple of different scenarios that the MSBA will, options 1 to 15 of what we've evaluated. This is the district and the town's preference. And then the MSBA Board of Directors has to vote to approve that and move it forward. And finally, the schematic design report is taking that preferred option, getting it to a schematic design level for cost estimates, and that's that point, based on the cost estimates, that the MSBA grant amount is determined and put into a writing, into an official document between the town and the MSBA that says, if you approve the project locally, this is the maximum amount of money the MSBA will give you, depending on different scenarios and how they play out. So there's 3 involvements of the board of directors, staff throughout, but those are the specific touch points where the board of directors are involved.
Follow up? Yes.
Just one follow-up question.
Mr. Wells?
Good evening, Richard Wells, Chair. Just to help Mr. Fahey here. For all the members, if you notice, that was just a very thorough, detailed report. Mr. Milano came to us, previously was employed by the MSBA department in their operations intimately, which has really been a benefit to the town and us working through this project. That's why he's so thoroughly versed in it.
Yes, Mr. Fahey, your follow-up.
Great, that's good to know. Thank you, Richard. So, Mr. Milano, what happens in a scenario where a town prefers one option and the MSBA either doesn't support that or prefers a different option? How does that get resolved?
Ultimately, the decision on a building is a local choice, and the MSBA will give great deference to a local choice. I haven't seen a situation where there's been significant differences on an ultimate choice that a district has made between a district and the MSBA. I think more of the back and forth would be about, okay, a district wants to do X, Y, and Z in their building, and the MSBA will say, sure, you can do that, but we're not going to pay you any money for that. So that's more of kind of where there might be disagreements that come to the front. But in terms of the direction that a community that's working with the MSBA wants to go, ultimately, it is very much a local decision, as long as you abide by their rules, complete the reports that are required, evaluate all the options that you're required to do, share that information publicly, and then make a decision, which is a select board, school committee votes that have to take place throughout the duration of the project.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ma'am, you first, and then sir, you. If anyone else wants to speak, if you could come down, because I'd like to get this to a vote. Thank you. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you. Hi, Joan Fall, town meeting member, Precinct 7. And I was wondering if the school committee has an opinion on this article?
Yes, you're recognized, ma'am. Ms. Carroll.
Lizzie Carroll, town meeting member, Precinct 3, chair of the school committee. The school committee supports the school building project and is thrilled that Milton has been invited into the MSBA program. Given the time frame, in terms of a specific answer to your question, in taking this up the other day, we were considering the time frame in the 270 days from the beginning of phase 1. As we discussed last night in our considerations regarding prioritizing the override, our preference would be to postpone taking this up until after we have made it successfully through the override. Having said that, the number one, we need to maintain our eligibility within the program. And so that is the vote that we took the other day, was just to, if it was up to the school committee, we would be taking this up after the override. However, if we move this to a vote, we encourage the members to just listen to the feedback about and the information from Mr. Milano about, how we're following a process. And that is something the school committee is committed to doing. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm Tom Sharkey from Precinct 5, town meeting member. Question for Mr. Milano, given what you were sharing with us before. Is there any danger that we face? You mentioned 45% reimbursement. With the present situation between Milton and the state, is there any risk that that 45% might not be delivered?
Just on that, 2 comments in terms of a no vote generally, locally, if a appropriation or a project vote locally related to MSBA projects, if a no vote does take place, the MSBA generally takes a big pause in terms of continuing to work with that community. So messages, I received an email from an MSBA staff today checking in on the status of the vote because they expected it to take place last night. So in terms of a no vote, that message would be heard by the MSBA and it would give them pause on terms of the project with Milton. In terms of MBTA communities, the town was considered non-compliant when the Board of Directors voted Milton in. To date, there's been no communication raising any issues between the town's MBTA community status or otherwise as it relates to the MSBA. If we were to be informed of anything along those lines, we'd certainly share that. But to date, there's been nothing affected. The town was invited in the midst of some of the legal fights that have been ongoing. And we have talked about it with MSBA, but it hasn't been brought up as an issue that would put the project, to our knowledge, at risk.
Thank you. Mr. Neely, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Neely, town meeting member, Precinct 3. I guess the question I have is that this article is talking about the Cunningham School. We've been here before discussing about a new school up by the Lamb Field and Milton High School. I'd like an explanation from either the school committee or the school building committee as to how this fits in the big picture. Are we building 2 schools? Are we substituting a different site? What is the big picture on the capital program for the schools? Because this seems to be one piece, and I don't know which piece it is, and I don't know what it represents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Rourke, or defer to Mr. Milano. Mr. Milano, you're recognized.
I'll just make one kind of clarifying MSBA process comment, and then if Mr. O'Rourke wants to add anything. When you apply to the MSBA, you have to pick a subject school. So Milton selected its statement of interest school was the Cunningham School. It showed the overcrowding impacts in the district and at Cunningham in particular. And once you're invited in, that project for the MSBA's perspective is the Cunningham School project, even though Milton, through the board action letter that the board of directors voted, can study a new elementary school. It can study a new middle school. But for the MSBA's parlance, it will remain the Cunningham School project. I worked on a school in Marlborough. It was the richer school that we applied for. We built a totally new school, and throughout that whole process, it was the Richer Elementary School project, and we built a brand new, the Goodnow Brothers Elementary School in the city of Marlborough. So it's kind of a quirk of the MSBA process in terms of how the project is referred. That's why the appropriation refers it to the Cunningham School project. But really, it's about an addition renovation at Cunningham, a repair at Cunningham, and a new school, whether an elementary school or middle school. So that's kind of how the MSBA views it. It's a little confusing. We'll do our best to explain that ad nauseum over the next several years. We apologize for the confusion, but it's just how the MSBA process works. And Mr. O'Rourke, if you had anything else to add.
Thank you. Ma'am, do you wish to speak? I think you'll be our last speaker before we go to a vote, since I see no one else coming down. So yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ada Rosemarin, Precinct 2, Town Meeting Member. And I rise to encourage you all to support this article. I want to express my appreciation for the School Building Committee that's been working for 6 years to solve and address this overcrowding problem that the Milton Public Schools has, and has been working arduously on this project. There were 4 prior submissions to the MSBA for statements of interest. I was involved in drafting those, the charm that we finally got accepted into the cycle, and I'm thrilled that we were invited into this cycle. This is a big deal, and the MSBA is watching what we do and wants to know that the town supports our involvement in this project. Time is money, and the faster we do this, the less the project will cost. So the time to do this is now, and then the project will move forward, and we'll have a new school in short order. Thank you.
Thank you. So no sooner do I say last one. Mr. Donna, you have something urgent to say? I do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I appreciate the indulgence. Kevin Donahue, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. I will remind the body that although we do have 270 days to complete this phase of the project, there is another ticking clock in the background. And that was related to our land swap article, which was almost 2 years ago. In that article, we set a timeline of 5 years to appropriate funding for the school. We have chewed through approximately 1/3 of that time as of today. So even though a delay may not seem consequential in terms of the overall timeline, it may have significant effects. I strongly, strongly encourage a yes vote tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the vote. This is a bonding article. Borrowing money requires a 2/3 vote. If we can open up the poll. All in favor, please press 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. I declare a 2/3 vote. Now, we got 2 to go. If you're willing to push through, I'm with you. I'm with you. So we'll go to Article 14. The Warrant Committee in your green sheet. You have a new green sheet on 14. They did not have a chance to review it before. They're recommending a no vote. This is one of the citizens petitions we have. Mr. Caldwell, do you have anything you'd like to add behind your recommendation on the no vote, or let it stand per your comments? Let the comments stand. Very good. We have 1. Mr. Kelly, you want to speak to 14? Or, yes, you do, and I saw Ms. Swenson, are you here? Do you want to speak to 14? Yes, and then Sir there and Mr. Chisholm. Okay, Mr. Kelly, you've been waiting, I think, the longest. Mr. Chisholm, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kevin Chisholm, Jr., Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. I'd like to hear from the proponent of, or proponents of this article, as they did not appear before the Select Board or the Warrant Committee, which is a little unprecedented. So I'd like to hear from that, number one, to explain the rationale behind this move, and the second, to get the opinion of the school committee, if they've been able to take a vote on this, as it directly affects their budget and operations. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Do we have one of the signatories before us that could speak to this citizens' petitions? Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Good evening. Matthew Morong, Precinct 2. I am one of, I think, about 200 signatories to this, so I can't speak on everyone's behalf, but I will make a statement now on my own opinion on this matter. I am here to ask, in the aftermath of the SJC ruling, what we are doing as a town and where our town leadership has been. The public process following this outcome has felt non-existent. There hasn't been a public forum or even public statements from the town about what has transpired. This matter has been discussed behind closed doors, and citizen speak has been absent from recent planning board and select board agendas on numerous occasions. At this critical time, our leadership needs to communicate and engage with our citizens, to level with them about where we are going as a town. On an issue that has divided us so deeply, we deserve a transparent public process. And citizens deserve to feel heard in this process, not only the citizens you agree with. I did not author this article, but I support the spirit of it, and with the intent to send a message to the leadership of this town that they don't have a blank check to fight this battle into eternity, but also not to tie our hands when it comes to legal resources we may need for other purposes. I would like to make an amendment to this article.
Very good. What's your amendment, sir? I think
So
you submitted this in advance, I believe, right? So
I did, yes.
Warrant Committee Clerk, can you please bring this up?
So I would like to drastically reduce the dollar value from $250,000 to $24.61 out of the Select Board's Law and Professional Special Services line item to give it to the schools, to revise the appropriation to $282,975.39.
Mr. Morong, I've been dying all day to know how you came up with this number. Could you please answer that for the moderator,
It's
please?
1 cent for every unit that we are expected to zone for in zone capacity under the rapid transit regulations.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. We now have a motion. Do you have a follow-up? Well, by the way, there were two questions, so if I could just also get that second question. What does the school committee think of this initial, well, we have two chances. What do you think of this initial article? You want a moment to confer? Okay. Yes, they want to just confer a little bit on what they think of now this article. Fine. Do other speakers want to speak while they are conferring? Or would you rather wait to hear? Yes, Mr. Kelly, you would? Okay, very good. You want to wait, okay.
The school committee recommends that the town vote no.
Thank you. Okay, now, Mr. Kelly, I think you were next.
It's all about the trolley. Good evening. My name is Brian Kelly. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 7. I am speaking to Article 14. Please do not take any legal counsel funds to stop the MBTA Communities Act fight with the state. I want Milton to finish the job. I'd like to thank Mr. Mark Christo of Waldo Road. He opened my eyes to most of this information I'm about to share. Let's start with a short story with presidential implications. Excuse me?
The member has a right to speak, so.
Okay, go ahead. So I would like to thank my dad. Okay, let's start with a short story with presidential implications. It will give you some context as to why we have continued this fight regarding the MBTA Communities Act. I don't think a lot of you know the background of the story. We want to be reclassified as an adjacent community. A month before his assassination in 1963, President John F. Kennedy visited Cambridge, Massachusetts, and chose a site next to Harvard University for his presidential library. It was to be the place for the presidential records in an office when he retired from public life. Can you guess what was on that site? The Red Line Maintenance and Storage Yard. Harvard neighbors, also known as the Brattle Street Brahmins, were concerned about traffic and congestion the tourists would bring to the area. They fought tooth and nail to stop the project. The state was looking to move the Harvard train yard and eyed the other end of the line near Ashmont. Harvard was the terminus on the North Shore, on the north side of the Red Line at the time. Okay, so one of the considered sites was Butler Station. The area filling the and they wanted to fill in the area of the marshes by Butler Station, so you'd have the view of the yard from Hutchinson Field. Other sites were considered like Codman, South Braintree, Savin Hill, North Quincy, and Mattapan. In March of 1968, a citizen's petition was filed in Milton against the MBTA train yard, gathered 4,000 signatures to encourage their leaders to oppose the most expensive option. The Milton and Mattapan option was the most expensive. It was going to increase our cost to the town from $500,000 a year to $1.2 million a year. Just 6 months later, powerful Kennedy-aligned politicians like Governor John Volpe took quick action to move the train yard to Milton, Mattapan. They would now have to move the subway all the way to Mattapan to accomplish this. Why not the other sites? What kind of political compromises were hashed out to come to this final decision without Milton at the table? Citizens from Milton rejected the idea led by town meeting member, this was town meeting member Bill White. That's Judy White's and Betty White's dad. And he was the chair at the time, and he led the opposition. They persisted and fought hard. Can you imagine standing in the way of a dead president that was revered all around the world? And you thought Andrea Campbell was hard. Milton's main concerns were pure math. It takes much greater length of time for a train to accelerate and decelerate with a 6-car subway train. Milton would be forced to dispose of all but one Milton station. It would have been the Milton station on Adams Street to accommodate the physics of the train. In addition, because these trains are electrified by a live third rail, a viaduct would have to be constructed on the Capon Street crossing and the Central Ave crossing for the safety of our families. The train yard would be taken by eminent domain. Homes in the Capon Street Peninsula were in the crosshairs. Noise from the facility was also a concern for both Milton and Mattapan neighbors alike. Service would be cut when they removed the existing trolleys to build the new system, and they'd be without service from a year to 2. So what happened, you ask? Now the rest of the story. The Kennedy Library never did get built in Cambridge. In 1975, the Kennedy Library Corporation abandoned plans to have the library at the Harvard University. They moved it to Columbia Point. You all know where it is. Harvard agreed to build the Harvard Kennedy School on the train yard and changed the street name to John F. Kennedy Street. The world continued to turn during this upheaval. Passenger train lines that were prevalent before the introduction of interstates, like the one through East Milton, and with the mass appeal of the car train's ridership declining, taking the train was no longer fun. Taxes on train properties soared as ridership dwindled. In December 1969, Penn Central Railroad, Mark Christo's father worked for them, Penn Central Railroad owned a train yard at Dover Street Yard in South Boston near the Red Line. Because of financial woes, they wanted to sell the property. The MBTA, with the help of Mayor Kevin White, facilitated the purchase. The Boston Globe, 2 weeks earlier, printed an image of Bill White from Milton with concerned citizens in Mayor White's office pleading for help and holding signs. This stopped the Milton and Mattapan subway project in its tracks. Milton would be forced to dispose of all but the Milton station stops to accommodate the, no, that's just last time, sorry. Okay, I apologize. All right.
Yes, he has 4 minutes left.
Yes.
By
So
the way,
they
Mr.
sold the
Mr.
yard.
Mr.
It's
Kelly,
done. Yep.
Mr. Kelly, someone may be asking about scope. The reason I'm allowing this is because the justification by the member was the purpose of this citizens article was to discuss about the town's focus on MBTA zoning. So, in my view, Mr. Kelly is responding to that. That's why I'm allowing this discussion.
Milton's hard-fought legislative and court actions had prevented construction from starting on the Mattapan site over the previous 2 years. Chair White said it's a victory for all the people in the town. So now you know why Milton Trolley is not a subway or rapid transit. The story reminds me of the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and it makes me wonder what Milton would look like today if the concerned citizens were not successful in their endeavor. Denny Swenson is like the angel Gabriel. She had to jump in the Neponset River so that we could all see more clearly the cost and unfairness of the MBTA Communities Act. I'm sure some people who are here tonight would like to throw Denny in the Neponset. Unfair. Well, because the trolley had multiple stops in Milton, the current state guidelines are treating them as subway stops similar to North Quincy, Wollaston, Quincy Center, and the Adams Subway Station. Milton has Capon Street, Valley Road, Central Ave, and Milton Station. Take a moment and picture the station differences in your mind. Quincy stations are spread out large with handicapped accessibility and vast amounts of parking. In Milton, you can park at Capon Street crossing only if you can convince town meeting member Kathy Fagan to let you use her driveway. 2,500 zone units for Milton is an extraordinary burden because half of the surrounding station land is located in Boston or the Neponset River. To fulfill our rapid transit mandate, Milton had to find other areas of Milton to reach our transit zoning quota, and East Milton became that answer. Guaranteed, we do have the occasional bus from East Milton along Granite Ave. Ever notice traffic over there in the morning? And flooding during the most high tides and surrounded by the crucial environmental habitat of the marshes of the Neponset. Because of the non-promulgated guidelines, more height and density is needed to make up for the shortfall of developable land around the trolley. Have you ever wondered why the many citizens of Precinct 7 are so pissed off? Let's bring fairness to another level. Mark discovered that the state, in implementing the act, worked with approximately 79 communities and gave leeway to a few more, making it a total of 90 communities that were subject to the mandate.
Mr.
In
Kelly,
each case,
Mr. Kelly,
I'm done.
2 minutes.
They reduced the number of units that they would have to agree upon to become compliant. It's like the state has compromised with almost half of the communities and sued us. So if you're wondering why Milton is where we are today, it's because the state is not compromised with us like the other communities. Why? I don't know. Maybe our leaders just didn't push hard enough. 17 rapid transit communities are downgraded to 12. Arlington, one of the first communities to brag about being compliant, was downgraded from rapid transit to adjacent communities 60%, from 5,105 to 2,046 zone units. Dover, 750 units down to 102, an 86% reduction. Wow. I believe that we have a great chance now in the lower courts to rule favorably for us since the SJC decision. An opportunity to reclaim the $400 grand in grant money. We need to be classified as an adjacent community and with 1,000 zone units. Benjamin Franklin said, I told them to sit together and work out the differences. That compromise was the oil that makes democracy work. We're concerned about the schools like you are, but you don't seem to be concerned about being taken advantage by the state. I have a list of every community in the reduction. If you want more information, Mark Christo is up in the corner. He'll be happy to share it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Swenson, you're recognized. Mr. Kelly stayed within his 10 minutes.
Denny Swinson, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 5.
You have to be a little louder, ma'am.
Can I turn it? Denny Swinson, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 5. Could you put up slide 1? Thank you. Yes, Article 14 threatens the Select Board's ability to legally advocate for the town. Seeking to remove even a small amount from the Legal Defense Fund or the General Fund from which the Select Board pulls to pay for the town's legal defense sets a very bad precedent. The petition drive stated the intent is to cut off the town's legal effort in relation to the MBTA Communities Law. But this fund is for the town's defense against any litigation brought by anyone. There are legal cases our town is facing other than the MBTA zoning matter. Town Administrator Nick Milano spoke at the Warrant Committee and explained that current pending legal matters include the 40B at 648, 652 Canton Avenue, the Memory Care Project, Unquity and Winter Valley. Collective bargaining agreements end in June. The town's legal bargaining services will become more earnest in the spring. Any HR or personnel matters that need legal assistance fall under this category. Those are expenses that we anticipate for this line item. Depending on which way these legal matters go, we could continue to spend several $1,000s a month on them throughout the remainder of the year. In January, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that the guidelines or regulations of the MBTA Communities Law were legally ineffective and unenforceable because they have not been promulgated or created properly. According to the SJC, Milton did not break the law with last year's referendum vote. The state had left the public out of the public process. The state had not done the public hearing properly. They had not done the small business impact assessment or study. They had not assessed nor filed the estimate of its fiscal effect, including that on public and private sector. They had not done that for the first year, its second year, or projection over the first 5-year period. None of that information had been filed with the Secretary of State prior to the SJC ruling. So that promulgation process of creating the regulations will occur now and in the coming months. I know that state officials have said they will just rubber stamp the regulations quickly and that won't change. But that would violate the law once again. The obligation is for the state to have a process in which they actually listen. The Administrative Procedure Act calls for incorporating the findings from the public process into the new regulations. According to the SJC ruling, the deadline was one of those regulations that had not been promulgated. So the $140,000 seawall study monies were taken from Milton unlawfully, as was the $250,000 municipal fiber grant. The state owes Milton $390,000. Milton may want legal services in order to get that money back. Could you go to the second slide? On Friday, we learned big news. The state auditor, Diane DeZiglio, determined that the MBTA Communities Law is an unfunded mandate. Under Massachusetts law, an unfunded mandate is a state-imposed requirement that forces local governments to spend money without providing the necessary funding. The auditor's office determined that. Could you go to one more slide? Is that the right one? Okay. Towns are required to change their zoning laws, which involves legal fees, planning consultants, and administrative costs. Infrastructure upgrades, roads, sewer, water, schools, emergency services may all be necessary. But the state did not allocate the direct funding for these expenses. The law was not voluntary. It was imposed on towns without their approval, making it a true mandate under local mandate law. The state did not provide funding when the law was passed, meaning towns are expected to comply out of pocket or risk losing state grants. According to the state's website, municipalities can continue to comply with no guarantee of reimbursement for expenses incurred, or under the local mandate law, they can petition the Superior Court for an exemption from compliance until funding is provided. Other towns will seek funding for their expenses. The news on this on this unfunded mandate determination just hit on Friday. As a town, we need to be vigilant, and we may want to have clear legal advice from those who specialize in this changing landscape. In the meantime, please do not remove any money from this important legal fund that is overseen by our elected select board. It affects more than the MBTA community unfunded mandate. I urge my fellow town meeting members to vote no on Article 14. And in addition, and this is important for those of you at home who care about representation, checks and balances, please consider running for town meeting. We need more people engaged in the democratic process. You can reach me, denny@denswin.com. A bunch of us want to support those who want to listen and represent the people.
Just Ms. Swenson, thank you. Okay. Folks, the appropriate way to express an opinion like that is point of order. Perhaps I didn't hear you, but thank you. I think Ms. Conlon, you may be next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Katie Conlon, Precinct 3. I actually rose to support the Warrant Committee's recommendation on the original motion. It greatly concerned me to have this body considering removing $250,000 from the law budget. With this amendment, we're no longer talking about the $250,000, so my remarks about the law budget over the last 10 years, 3 of which we spent substantially more than $283,000 on the professional services line, are not as relevant to this motion to amend. So I will just simply say I think it is a very bad precedent for no matter what side of the MBTA Communities Act you're on, and I think there's a lot of nuanced positions. There are people on the yes side, there are people on the no side who have very genuinely held beliefs about the MBTA Communities Act. But the way to express an opinion on that is not, in my view, by trying to reduce the law budget. There are 4 months to go in the fiscal year. The law budget includes a lot of things other than litigation. It covers things like requests for proposals, real estate, other transactions that are beyond the scope of the flat fee retainer. So I would urge town meeting members to consider the precedent that this would set and to vote no and to support the Warrant Committee's recommendation.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, I think you're next. Then we'll go to Mr. Zoll. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. When are we going to end this? Okay, we're all here tonight, pretty much. For point.
Excuse me. Can you introduce yourself, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't you recognize me? Mark Croning. I've been up 3 times. You're annoyed probably hearing from me, but I'll say this: we're here tonight because the schools was the big issue, right? That's why this special town meeting was called, and I was so heartened to hear what's developing here now with the state inviting us to this pool for funds and whatnot. Okay, we all want to support that. In December, about a year ago, the town meeting here voted 76% to adopt the MBTA Communities Act, rapid transit, under cover of darkness with no real input from anybody, and subsequently 54% of the town voters, and one of the biggest turnouts in this election, voted to reject that plan. Why? Because the stress that it would put on our infrastructure, our schools, our fire, our police, none of that was done properly with impact studies or anything. They just kind of did it under cover of night.
Sir, let's not go cast aspersions, please. Let's just
do what?
Don't cast aspersions on what boards.
I'm talking about the state government, sir.
The state government? Okay.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
in any event, what I was going to say was the town, okay, I've lost my train of thought. The town is not representing what the voters of this thing want, the voters of Milton want. We actually felt in East Milton and the east side of town, also down on Capon Street, that this whole mess was going to be thrown on us. But it's not only going to be thrown on us. All we wanted was consideration to be reclassified as an adjacent community. That's all we wanted. We're not some crazy yahoos at anything, because we could see in the densest part of town, which is where I live, that there were concerns about schools here and school crowding. You mean to tell me that blindly inviting a potential 25% population increase of multi-failed, but yet we're just going to open up the floodgates, and not even resist it? As Denny mentioned, this was just declared an unfunded mandate by the state auditor, okay? The governor declared an emergency so she could circumvent the SJC's ruling that these guidelines were unenforceable, which is totally disingenuous in my opinion. All we want is reasonable. We want to be reasonable and get this town to work together on the priorities. And you're going to lose if people do petty things that, like the $24.61 without even listening to us. Do you think that's not going to alienate the 54% of voters in this town who voted pretty resoundingly that they did not think that the rapid transit designation was fair? So what I'm asking for is, can we just stop this theater of the $24.61? The next item is going to be another theatrical thing, because they can't compel the planning board to do anything. But we're all going to be here till late tonight voting on theater that means nothing, just so somebody with an axe to grind can grind the axe. If we want this community to come together and do what we need to do on these big questions like overrides and support the schools, can we stop the pettiness? And can you listen to what we think on the east side of town about the MBTA transit? Because we certainly want to listen to people. My kids are grown up. They went to Milton schools. But I understand, and I always voted for overrides. But I supported the arts here. Like, why won't people listen to us like we're some yahoos? We just want to make sure our side of town doesn't get crazed, nor do we want the schools to get completely decimated by overcrowding. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Zoll, you're recognized.
Ben Zoll, I'm a Precinct 5 town meeting member of the Select Board. Just a couple of notes. So, one, I'm not supposed to be up here. Typically, members of boards, planning boards, select boards, we sit back. We let the chairs do the speaking for us, but we've thrown that protocol out the window. So I'm going to grab the microphone and say just a few things. The first thing I'm going to say is that we lost the case to the Supreme Court. There was a technicality about the regulations, but we lost. The law is legal, it's enforceable, and the guidelines are going to get put back into place. Whether or not we think they're fair, they're going to be there. We have a duty to follow the law. We do, okay? But more importantly than that, we have a...
Yes, what's the point of order, sir? I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
I'm out of scope. Should I start with the Kennedy administration? Would that be more helpful? Sorry. Okay, you're right. So if you would let me just get to my point, and we let other folks get to their points, we have, oh, thank you. We have a decision right now as a town about whether we want to continue to throw good money after bad, pursuing an unwinnable lawsuit. It's unwinnable. As much as people would like to say that it's not unwinnable, we've been told it's unwinnable.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, please sit down. Excuse me, sir. Please sit down.
So we get told that we're, the people that are in favor of MBTA and following the law, that we're the ones that aren't listening. I'd just like to demonstrate that I listen, I stop, I let people shout at me often, and I'm happy to do that. But look, as a town, we have to have an open and honest discussion about, is this the right way to pursue? The Select Board has not had any public comments around this article. The Planning Board has had a lot of commentary about the lawsuit, but we have not seen a plan, which we were told would be right in order right after the election. So I think the citizens of this town deserve, yes, to be heard, but we also deserve an honest conversation about the way that we're spending our money and resources and the way that we're endangering our future generations. With a story that started in 1963 earlier, that puts us in 2085, right? We're all dead at that point. Do we really want to be setting precedent for now what had happened in the early 60s? That's insane, right? We have a zoning law that dates back to the 1930s. Great, okay? Is that probably right for us? I don't know. But do we need to have an honest and open conversation in this town about whether we're going to continue to follow the law or whether we're going to continue to break it? Yes. Is this the forum to do it? No, it's not the forum to do it. It's not the forum to do it. But the only way that we can do it is to have this article on the ballot, on the warrant, of which I was a proud signatory. We owe the people of Milton an explanation, not just little trolleys and stories about John Kennedy, but a real explanation about why we think that it makes sense to continue to waste money on an unwinnable lawsuit. So I am in support of this article, and you probably guessed that already. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of friends over on that side of the room or in the back, but that's the way it goes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. All right, I'll hear from two more speakers. Gentlemen, I think in the brown sweater, you were first, and then Ms. Agostino.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go off mic. Doug Hine, Precinct 2, town meeting member. I've been thinking about this article a lot. I'm going to just kind of fast forward in Tarantino at the end and say I don't think that you should support this article. I'll give you my reasons in a moment. But the reason why, I don't clap yet. But I want to say that one thing we can all agree on is nobody likes paying lawyers. I don't care what your position is. We're paying $940 an hour for the representation that we had. Great representation. We paid a lot of money. I think it was over $200,000 that we paid in legal fees. And counting, $250, I'm sorry. And I'm not factoring in the $140,000 grant or any of the other grants that we've lost or anything like that. It's cost us a lot of money to fight this. And I get it. And I understand that people are upset about this law. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that this law is so unclear, because it's what's brought us to this point. It's what's brought us to the point where we're yelling at each other over this, okay? Nobody likes the fact that this law is not clear. But I've been a litigator for almost 25 years, and you can tell you've got a losing argument when you keep changing the narrative about why you think you're right or why the other guy's wrong, right? Remember 2.5 years ago, it was it's not now, it's not, never, it's just whatever it was. That went away. We still don't have an article. And then it was, well, the law is unconstitutional. Well, the SGC said it was. Then it's the AG can't enforce it. Yes, they can. Then it's the Administrative Procedures Act. Now it's the local mandate law, which I spent a lot of time looking at today. And it's not going to kill this MBTA zombie, all right? It's not a silver bullet. It's just the newest in a long line of false hope promises, laws picked out of nowhere that's going to somehow get rid of MBTA. It's not. What that law, well, I'll be specific, what the local mandate law says is that if you think that your town has received an unfunded mandate from the Commonwealth, you can, as your sole remedy, petition the Superior Court to get money. Now that doesn't apply to Milton at all, because all the costs, the direct costs, which is all you're entitled to get, regarding this law, were already given to us in grants. So we don't have a leg to stand on about getting any money back. Now, somebody might say, well, wait a minute, the planning board just said that it might cost another couple $1,000s to hire UTL to do X, Y, and Z. But that $4,000 that we're spending on UTL is to come up with zoning that's not compliant. So that's not a mandate. The mandate is to follow the law, not to spend money to get around the law. Anyway, I said that you still shouldn't support. I'll make one other point. So the local mandate law says you have to go to Superior Court, right? What it doesn't say is, it doesn't say if you think this is an unfunded mandate, you can just ignore the underlying law. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say town meeting can vote not to follow the law. It doesn't say that the select board can take a 3-2 vote to not follow the law. What it says is you have to go to Superior Court and get a court order. That's called following the law. You don't just get to decide not to follow it. So, I digress. I cannot support this article, because whether it's for $200,000 or $20 or 5 cents, all right, I don't support taking money out of the legal budget. Look, we need to course correct very quickly as a town on this to preserve local control, and that's something East Milton should be very concerned about. We need to course correct on this. We need to stop indulging these half-baked legal fallacies that do nothing but feed our confirmation bias. And we need to we're going to need every last nickel, because if we don't course correct, what's going to happen is we're going to find ourselves in another completely avoidable lawsuit. And I don't want to see that happen. Thanks.
Diane DiTullio, Agostino, Precinct 8. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a couple of questions before my comment. And the first one, I believe, the citizens' petitions are not written or reviewed by town council to say that they're correct. So the technical question, if we can afford to get a legal answer, has to do, first of all, the select board received the petition and then it went to the town clerk. Is the format that the town clerk received it in exactly what we're looking at here in the warrant on page 48? And then I'll have the legal question if we can confirm this is the exact format
So you got two questions. You'll have a format question, and then you'll have one legal question?
Right.
Okay. The
Oh,
question
and an
is,
accountant, one for the town accountant.
I couldn't hear you. What, ma'am?
I know, one for the town accountant, depending on those answers.
Okay. So the question was the document as received in the citizens' petition exactly what we're seeing here? I think, Mr. Milano, you assembled the warrant. Is that right? Are you the right person to answer this?
Yes, the citizens petition, if on the
If
screen,
you can
it's
get closer to the
starting
mic.
with Article 14, everything from 2C all the way down to ending with tax levy is what was delivered by the petitioners. We inserted the names based on the first list, and then the warrant committee recommendation was added to the warrant. Obviously, at that time, they had not yet made a recommendation. But from 2C through tax levy is exactly what was delivered to our office and certified by the town clerk.
And this is not a facetious question, Mr. Moderator, but when I was elected as a selectman, that's the term I swore to, I will never forget the first packet that arrived on my front door. I don't know if they do that anymore, but the packet was like this thick. And inside were all these lawsuits that were confidential. They were only discussed in executive session. So the question, the other technical legal question I have, because of my concern about the law budget, is this petition does not identify under 2024 ATM article, the article number. It says XXXX. This sounds like a technical thing, but most lawyers in the room have heard of a major lawsuit that was lost because a period was in the wrong place on a claim. So that's why I want to know legally, is the petition legal since it does not identify the exact articles they're taking money from?
Interesting question. Mr. Mello, I think you rendered opinion on this when it came to the select board. Can you comment on this? So the article that authorized the budget is not referenced. So does that make it a legal article? Is that your question, ma'am? Okay, or petition?
So, thank you, Mr. Moderator, town meeting. I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but my advice when we got this was not to say that there aren't certain circumstances in which you can.
If you could stay close to the mic.
Sorry, and this, I'm not to suggest that there aren't. It would be impossible, excuse me, to modify the text of a proposed article that you receive in connection with a citizen's petition submission. But I'm loath to do it generally. You know, as I explained to the warrant committee, the select board, citizens petition signatories aren't lawyers, and I think you should exercise flexibility. So the advice for me was keep it intact as it was submitted. I think it's pretty clear from the table what account money was proposed to be removed from and what line item the money was proposed to be transferred into. So, but is the question whether the boxes with the XX renders it, unlawful? I don't think so. I spoke with Ken Woodland, the chief of the division of the Bureau of Municipal Finance of the Division of Local Services. The concern he expressed with this proposal was that you couldn't amend an appropriation in such a way as to create a deficit. Is that the question?
That's my next question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah. So basically, you would have to look at what remains from the appropriation, accounting for encumbered expenses, and that would be basically the maximum by which you could reduce the appropriation. That was the specific issue that he cited for Chapter 41 Section 33, and he said that there might be a couple of additional statutes that would be invoked from, you know, with respect to that issue, but beyond that, no, I don't think the fact that there are double X's in those boxes renders it.
Okay, that's clear. Very good. And your final question?
Diane DiTullio Agostino, Precinct 8. He actually answered the technicality of this, because I'm sure, Mr. Moderator, in 42 plus years in this auditorium at town meetings, we could put the correct article numbers in there. I believe that's what he said. So that, because I don't believe we've ever had an article that did not identify an article. So is that something that the proponents would be willing to correct so that it's technically identified?
Well, we can't ask all 10 proponents here, the citizens.
Oh, so I should make a motion to do
Well,
it?
right now we have a motion to amend the dollar amount, and I think you'd really want to consider whether you wanted to offer that. But so we really got to address the motion to amend now, the 2461. So we can come back to your point after we address that motion to amend.
Okay.
Okay.
So then sticking to that motion to amend, unless there was a friendly amendment to do
Well, you could do something. You could ask Mr. Morong if he's willing to accept on his motion, because he's a town meeting member, if he'd be willing to put the article in there. Mr. Morong, would you be willing to put the article in there so we can just get this done quick?
So that everybody can go home tonight, I accept that amendment.
Very good. So when this is finalized by the town clerk, we'll update it with the article. Excellent. That's your third question. You're done?
No, so then it comes back to the point,
Yes.
excuse me, remember the legal town council said there are statutes as long as we're not in a deficit. So the third question prior to my comment was for the town accountant to tell us how much money, I mean, the budget started July 1st of last year. We're already almost March 1st next week. How do we know how much money has been expended?
We can't withdraw it down below what's
Correct. So
available.
that will.
That's your third question. Ms. Dexter, do you know that, or Mr. Milano, do you know that off the top of your head? Ms. Dexter? I believe it's above 200,000, but less than the 250. It's in that range, I think. We'll get the exact number.
Including, what's the term? My accounting. When you
Encumbered.
accrued expenses.
Yeah. Or encumbered is the word you'll hear, I think.
Right. The statutes might get into that, what's accrued.
Mr. Milano, you're recognized.
Sure. Out of this line item, the town has spent or encumbered approximately $90,000. So as amended, it's okay if the amendment were to go through, but as originally drafted, the account would immediately be in deficit at that point.
Okay.
Okay, so my comment is, the point's been made, everyone understands it. We're all looking for pennies here for our schools and for everything else. So at some point, we have to come together and put our faith in the select board. And as a former select board member, the emergency reserve fund could always be tapped by a select board if they felt the need. Because as I said, sitting in this room tonight, we don't even know all the lawsuits Milton has. So I strongly urge a no vote. Thank you for raising the point, but we have to maintain this salary line item the way it is so that Milton can function. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. You're our last speaker.
Thank you. Tom Callahan, Precinct 4. I will be very brief. I just wanted to complete the record from a previous speaker. The Friday announcement by the auditor was followed very quickly Saturday morning with a release of a statement from the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General. I quote, "The auditors claim that the MBTA Communities Law is an unfunded mandate is wrong. And more importantly, her letter has no effect whatsoever on implementation of the law. If those who oppose housing affordability try to make a similar claim in court, the state will vigorously defend the law, and we intend to be successful, as we have been so far.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go to a vote. As a motion to amend, this just requires a majority vote, so all we're voting on is changing the numbers you see on the citizens petition, this article in front of you. Sorry, and we need a vote, I'm sorry, from the warrant committee? Thank you. And also the school committee, you already know, it's, yep, just the warrant committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Caldwell, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6, and Chair of your warrant committee. Just a few things to say at this late hour. I know I'll never get another opportunity to do so. But this is just in regards to citizens petitions. In the future, as this current warrant committee sits, if you are a citizen and you sign a petition, you are more than welcomed to come down before the warrant committee and discuss what you are proposing for town meeting. We would love to have you. We would love to speak, love to ask you questions and engage. It helps us in our deliberative process, which then in turn we can inform you as we did of our position in our lengthy comment. So that's something I really wanted to say. I'm not going to reiterate and go line by line in the comment. This is obviously to the amendment. The warrant committee still recommends that the town vote no. We cite this is a dangerous precedent for a critical fund for our town. I would say that the warrant committee in its discussions focused on policy and good governance. We also cited, as other speakers have, the structural deficiency in the article as written originally. However, the MBTA was kind of third on the list. And we really focused on, and we are asking this body to just not take money from the fund and leave it as is. It again is a dangerous precedent. The town needs to be well prepared. And I would say the warrant committee acknowledges the citizens and the message is received. So thank you. We ask that you enter a no vote as to this amendment. Thank you.
Pardon me? Yeah, I'll come back. Yes, that was on the amendment. You're recommending a no vote on the amendment to modify, yes, the amendment. Okay, so we're now going to vote on this. I don't know how this is going to go, so we'll open up the poll. So you're voting on the amendment to reduce the transfer the 2461 from legal to school. All in favor of that? It's a majority vote. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion to amend fails by a vote of 60 yeses to 111 noes and 29 abstain. Now, it is my opinion that we have discussed everything there is to discuss about this. I'm going to make a call an audible, and just close the debate on this citizen's petition. However, you should know that per the question that Ms. Agostino stated, the article as stated at $250,000 exceeds the amount that the town is permitted to transfer. So you just should be informed of that. So, Mr. Morong, I'm trying to close debate. Do you have?
As a signatory to this article, and I believe our point has been made, I would like to withdraw the article at this time.
Well, again, we got an article that's out there. We got to vote on it. So that's unfortunately that's our bylaw. So I will go to the poll. All in favor? Now let me stop for a minute. When we have a no vote from the warrant committee, You're not voting yes or no on the warrant committee. You're voting on the article as you see it, just printed. So if you want to transfer the 250, you vote yes. If you don't want to transfer the 250, you vote no. This is it's clarified in our bylaws and rules. I'll state it again. You're not voting on what the warrant committee thinks, you're voting on the article. So if you want to transfer the 250, you vote yes. If you do not want to transfer the 250, you vote no. And if you vote abstain, I guess you're tired. But, all right, all in favor, please signify by pressing 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for abstain. The motion fails with 10 yeses, 172 noes, 16 abstain. We'll go to Article 15. To see if the town will vote to instruct the planning board to prepare for a vote by the 2025 annual meeting, a zoning article to amend Chapter 275 of the general bylaws, known as the zoning bylaw, to allow multifamily housing permitted as of right in accordance with Section 3A of the Zoning Act, etc. The warrant committee has recommended a no vote on this citizen's petition. Does anyone want to speak to this citizen's petition article? Yes, Ms. Swenson. If anybody wants to, please come down now, and we'll close this out. Thank you. You're recognized, ma'am.
Yes, Denny Swenson, town meeting member, Precinct 5. At a recent warrant committee meeting, town council Peter Mello stated that town meeting can't mandate that the planning board take specific action in this regard. The planning board is an independent public body and acts through its collective vote. A yes vote on this article would not have any binding effect on the planning board to mandate that the planning board take any particular action. He went on to say the town meeting can't dictate what the planning board does. A yes vote on this article is non-binding, and it sends a message of government overreach. It sends a message that the checks and balances of our local government are out of order. I've heard people claim that the old 2,500 unit plan would be a financial net positive. That is simply not true. It's quite the opposite. I have reviewed financial analysis that shows $10 million a year in expenses if the last article were to pass, and that was a conservative estimate. There was an assessment done by a state-approved consultant that was incomplete and fell apart upon questioning. It lacked explanation on how they arrived at their figures, and upon questioning, they seem to have left out categories of costs. People hold up that report as their proof to say that 2,500 units of zoning wouldn't cost our town. But State Auditor Diane DeZiglio determined the MBTA community law is a costly, unfunded mandate. Other towns will be challenging the state and seeking money for the impactual costs. Once we zone it, developers can build it as of right, and if we were to stop it, try to stop it in your neighborhood, the developers could sue our town. Before we lock into any plans, we need to see how expenses are handled by the state as this determination by the state auditor takes effect. And we need to see the outcome of the promulgation process so we know what the actual regulations are in order to zone in accordance with them. Good zoning is thoughtful, measured, and involves a public process inclusive of varied voices. We need to resist rushing in or being pushed into decisions based on fear. Our planning board has had 70+ meetings. They have studied numerous zoning plans on different ways to meet different goals, depending on what regulations are adopted by the state at the end of the process. To be clear, we're not against housing. We're about fairness. I urge my fellow town meeting members to vote no on this article, and I'd also like to remind those of you at home who care about representation, checks and balances, please consider running.
Excuse me, folks. Excuse me, folks. The member has a right to speak.
You don't want people to run for town meeting?
Ma'am, go ahead.
So,
Continue your comments. Go ahead.
We need more people engaged in the democratic process. I urge you to run for town meeting. Denny@denswen.com.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I now see 1, 2, 3, 4 speakers. I think Mr. Cronin, you're next, and then Mr. Morong, and I think Mr. Furs, and then Madam, you're last.
Hello, everybody. Mark Croninger, Precinct 7. I was in advertising for many, many years, and there was a formula we did in advertising that said it takes at least a 3 frequency to achieve something to sink into a consumer's mind. So I'm going to repeat something 3 times. There is no provision for affordable housing in the MBTA Communities Act. There is no provision for affordable housing in the MBTA Communities Act, and there is no provision for affordable housing in the MBTA's Community Act. Not sure if that'll sink in because it hasn't seemed to in over a year, but that's the case. What this actually is a boom for developers, a bust for Milton, and an overreach that will put a huge burden on particular parts of town and additionally on our schools. If at the beginning of this whole process, I went to a citizen speak in December of about a year and a half ago or whatever that was, and said, why didn't the select board make a bona fide effort to have us reclassified as adjacent, like all these other communities were able to do? I had no reasonable explanation because they did not make a bona fide effort. None of us would be here. This town would not be so divided, and all of this stuff that's pulling us all apart, our neighbors and our friends, would have never come to fruition. All we want is adjacent zoning. We are not a rapid transit community. And to add a 4th frequency to this, there is no affordable housing provision in the MBTA Communities Act. That's a red herring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Morong.
Given that this article cannot be legally binding, I actually think this is an opportune time for us to send a message to both the Planning Board and the Select Board that this body does not support their action on the MBTA Communities Law. In response to Member Swenson, her logic makes no sense at all. Growth.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not going to respond to Ms. Swenson. I am
just a reminder, if we could try to, I know it's late and I haven't enforced it much, but if we could avoid just for people as the member. Thank you. The prior speaker.
My apologies. Growth is feasible if you plan for it, and growth is feasible if you encourage it in your town. I believe that Milton is going to be required to grow, and I urge our bodies to prepare for that to happen. We will not go bankrupt by the logic that was presented before. The city of Boston would have been bankrupt hundreds of years ago. Moreover, I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Furs, you're recognized.
Brian Furs, Precinct 10. I'll be very brief. The law is binding. This is not binding, but we as a body have an opportunity to ask the Planning Board to follow the law. Thank you.
And ma'am, in front of me, you're last.
Hello, Christine Turnier, Precinct 4 Town Meeting Member. I had absolutely zero plans to talk tonight, so I'm dressed in my finest sweatpants. But I wanted to take a minute. I was one of the signatories of this petition. Did I think it was legally binding when I signed it? No, I did not. I also, as someone had mentioned earlier, I also work in advertising, and so I know how to send a message. And this was my way, along with hundreds of my neighbors, of sending a message that we really want the planning board to submit a compliant plan. I think about, I was trying to think about, as I was trying to put this together in my head, what is the analogy here? I'm going to date myself and probably make a cultural reference that maybe 25% of people will understand. But in the movie Say Anything, Lloyd Dobler stands in front of his ex-girlfriend's house with a boombox, desperate for her attention because she will not return his calls. She won't open the door for him. This is the equivalent of hundreds of your neighbors holding up a boombox to the planning committee saying, please listen to us and submit a compliant plan. That's all I got.
Thank you. So again, we'll go to a vote. It's just a majority vote. And as before, we're not voting on what the warrant committee recommends. You're voting on the article as it's printed on page 49. So if you approve of the citizens' petition, you will vote yes. And if you disapprove, you'll vote no. So with that, we'll open the poll. The motion carries with a vote of 95 to 74. Pardon me? Excuse me, I've had 2 members stand up who want to see a vote tally, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and if you raise hand, 7. So we're going to, Mr. Mallett, if you would put up and scroll through the vote. We'll see the vote tally. And when this is done, after this is done, I'll entertain a motion to dissolve. That's it. I'll entertain a motion to dissolve. And second, all in favor of dissolving, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Thank you very much, folks.